tune on in here.
This is a re-roll, mate. This is the start of a learning curve, isn't it?
Learning curve indeed.
It's been a learning curve since all our
Has
council experiences.
Yeah.
That's what these things are for sure.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Look at that. See, there we are. We're live on air.
Well, there we go.
And here we go. Oh yeah. We're up, running and live. First viewers in. Facebook's on. And we're good to go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Dean and Irv Spin Doctors Thursday night here in the dungeon, the guitar dungeon. Obviously, I'm here with more than just Councillor Irvine and myself. We've got a couple of Wagga local legends who have joined us for the evening. Mick Henderson, Paul Fennell. I'm not sure which one's more outlandish and which one's going to get us into more trouble, who has more bands than me. But welcome to Dean and Irv Spin Doctors, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us over here tonight, boys. It's
It's a pleasure.
great learning curve for us there, I can tell you.
Looking forward to the evening.
Couple of disclaimers. My name's Anthony Irvine. I'm a councillor on Temora Shire Council, but none of the views I express here are those of Temora Shire Council. They're mine and mine alone. Since its release on the 3rd of June this year, free speech in local government in New South Wales, a guideline, I've been sticking to that as closely as I possibly can to avoid any infractions, infarctions, and stuff-ups, and keeping it as clean as I can.
Are you worried about a code of conduct or something?
Well, sometimes they can get a little bit. No, I believe that councils weaponise them.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I've experienced
Absolutely.
it myself, in my opinion.
As have I.
Yeah. You've got a great experience of the code of conduct process and the NCAT process, and you've actually gone a step further than me at this point in time. And you've been asked not to run for local office for a period of time.
That goes back a few years, but I mean, it was actually a witch hunt. I quite openly own and happy to own the comment that I made, which was a phone call to the general manager after they tried to do what would you call it, a kangaroo court over code of conduct. I simply read out a statement in the council that night saying that, because as we all know, councillors must be notified if there's any potential legal ramifications coming from what's being discussed. So I notified them on the night that, look, if they continue down this path, I would maybe, and I did use the word, may be forced to take the appropriate legal action. And with that, I packed up my goods and left them to it. Unbeknownst to me, 3 councillors then followed me out the door because I left them without a quorum. That's not my problem. Anyway, the ensuing issue was the general manager, who is still the general manager, Peter Thompson, then reported me to Office Local Government the next day, saying I forced a loss of quorum, plus the fact months and many, many months later, he then decided to send them a recording of a phone call I did make that night. Quite happy to say I own the comment. There was something along the lines of, "G'day, Peter, I know it's late." I was actually back on the tractor that night. I can't remember whether I was ploughing or mowing or what the hell I was doing. But anyway, I did say, I work a lot harder for you than you and get paid a lot less. And I said, however, if you continue down this path, meaning this witch hunt after me, because it was absolute nonsense what they were on about, I said, I will be forced to take the appropriate legal action. And I said, and I finish it with, and I think you're a grub. Now, there's nothing in that. Some people might find I'm a bit impolite or something along those lines. Well, grow up. I guess professionally that might have been a bit inappropriate, I suppose, calling him that, but I felt his actions deserved that comment.
And that was made in a private phone call.
Private phone call.
So with no one that you were aware of. It wasn't in front of a group. It wasn't done at council. It was done at a private phone call.
Correct.
After what you consider to have been pretty unwarranted actions taken against you by a group of councillors and a code of conduct that you thought was probably inappropriate?
Look, it was more than councillors. There was a group of councillors, Dan Hayes, Vanessa Keenan, Rod Kendall, Greg Conkey. They all had it in for me because they didn't like people speaking the truth. They probably didn't like my blunt way of speaking at times, which I'll accept. Maybe I might have to tone things down at times because some people, they are so easily offended. But by the same token, I can choose to be offended because just by having a difference of opinion, you can take offence to something. But politics and these discussions they're a combative process. So sometimes you say things that might upset the other person. Well, you just have to wear that because I can assure you some of these nutcases that are on the hard left and their extreme ideologies certainly offends me, but I will defend their right to say them. So this was a complete witch hunt. Anyway, what ultimately happened, I actually left council due to ill health. In fact, I can vouch for the fact that even though the planning union and the Office of Local Government, after spending close to $500,000 chasing me after I left council, they then produced this recording and the documents that took place that night, and said that I was actually using my ill health to get out of this issue, which was an absolute lie. Some people don't even like the word lie, but it was a lie, because I can vouch for 10 days after being off council, I was actually in ICU for several weeks.
It's pretty easy to prove, isn't it?
Oh, very easy. And I'm happy to share the medical bills. But anyway, fast forward and get to the point. So quite some time later, I was actually meant to be running at number 1 on the ticket. I was unwell. Hendo stepped up. He's always supported me for poor bugger for about 30 years.
Been trying,
poor beggar. But anyway,
It's
so
hard working.
it is.
Little characters I know, right?
picking up the pieces.
That's what happens. But anyway, he comes around the broom and sweeps up the mess afterwards. But anyway, so we swapped spots on the ticket. We got something like 25 or 27% of the primary vote. I missed out getting it at number 3, which, by the way, has virtually never been done. I missed out by a couple hundred votes or something. I think local government, well, I know local government panicked. They thought Fennell's coming back. I know the Planners Union, DEPA, I mean, it was DEPA who put in their newsletter a picture of Hitler and a picture of me saying what a disgraceful person I am. Well, I could be offended by that, but I'm not suing anyone because I'll defend their right to compare me to whoever they like. So anyway,
it's a pretty hollow. It's a pretty hollow, even though it's such a common everyone I don't like is Hitler. Everybody I don't like is the people who throw out that don't know who fucking Stalin is. They wouldn't know, couldn't pick Stalin out of a police line.
Unfortunately, our education system has changed so badly. They
wouldn't know who they were.
The only one they know is old Adolf. They don't know anybody else.
That's right. So anyway, ultimately what happened, so they eventually took it to NCAT, which I didn't even get notified. They never sent me the report. I happened to open an email. It was during COVID. So like we're 3 years after I've left council. And I won't go through all the ins and outs, but basically they hadn't served me the papers, which I proved, and they lied in the NCAT hearing. Regardless of that, this went on backwards and forwards for about 6 months. I went to a barrister. It was going to cost me about $150,000 in 18 months of my life. And quite honestly, I didn't know how much longer of that I had left.
Yeah, you were pretty crook at the time.
I was at the time. So I thought, look, I'm not even going to bother contesting this. But in the meantime, the Office of Local Government or their legal representatives sent through an email to my solicitor and said that, and via NCAT, and said to the NCAT, all we will be seeking is that Mr. Fennell is ineligible to run for next year's election. Not that he's a bad person, or not that he's offended anyone. There goes that offence again. Or not that, he's too overweight. I don't care what they say, you know what I mean? No, it was that he couldn't run in next year's election. So I naturally smelt the rat. It's interference in the democratic process, and I knew what they were after from day one. So I just said, look, do not. Same as what they've done to you. Same as what they've done to others. The system, you can't fight the system. And, well, you can, but you need to have a lot of money. I didn't have the time, health, or money. I was never going back.
It's a very unfair process.
Outrageous. It's a kangaroo court.
I've looked at the process and I've made complaints about other people. And there have been breaches, clear breaches, and I have the evidence of these breaches. And they do tick all of those boxes, but they've been rejected because it's up to either the general manager or the mayor, depending on the matter, to actually make a call on it. And it's just a judgment call on their part.
Correct.
There's no test that they have to perform. And I'll give you the best example. The first code of conduct that I received was I had a Facebook page and another councillor put posts on my Facebook page that I responded to, right? The posts contained lies, they contained untruths, and they also contained abuse towards me, right? I responded to that, and I got a code of conduct for my response, but the original individual who posted never got a code of conduct. Now,
was not an issue.
Well,
allegedly not.
No,
just the whole word allegedly.
But no, and when I made a complaint about this process, because in my opinion, the general manager at the time only provided the investigator with some evidence and not all of the evidence, and didn't provide the investigator with the evidence that the other councillor had posted first.
Yeah.
I just consider that grossly unfair. I consider that corrupt conduct. It's a complete abuse of the process. Yet the Office of Local Government haven't taken any action in that matter. They haven't investigated that properly. And I'm at an absolute loss to understand how a councillor can abuse me online. I respond, I get a code of conduct, and the general manager misrepresents the evidence to that extent. Because
but you know why? Because they want to silence you. They don't care about that other person, because you're going to ask the pertinent questions that are going to upset someone or actually hold them to account.
Speaking out.
So they need to silence you. And this is the process. Sorry to cut you off, but they have basically, well, not basically, they have absolutely weaponized the code of conduct process. And I heard for 10 years roughly how, we've got to fix this, stop weaponizing. But it was good old Labor Keenan and Labor Hayes and the political parties. Once they particularly got involved, that's when it really became weaponized, because if you spoke out against anything, because I found as a majority of times, these political parties were there and they were there to drive their agenda. And of course, the Office of Local Government has been taken over by the Labor Party, and we know what grubs going on there and just how it is so out of control. I mean, to the point where, like yourself, I having a similar situation, that I actually asked one of the investigators on one of my whole 3 codes of conduct.
Yeah, that's three. You're not even
trying. No, I'm not even trying, but everyone thinks I'm, this outrageous, hang on, what do they like to call me? The disgraced former councillor.
Yes.
But, disgraced because I told the truth, how terrible. And I was actually defending the rights of the people, the very people who pay the rates. But anyway, getting to the point was that when I asked the investigator, I said, have you ever actually found a case against a staff employee of a council in the case of where a council is involved? And he actually said, no, we never have. He's been doing this since the beginning of, I think it's the 93 Local Government Act when all this came in. And of course, this is the problem. They said, because the poor old staff, they don't really have a defence. Really? And yet we can be slammed, hauled through the courts, as we now know, suspended for 2 years, because, by the way, I didn't contest that. So even though the likes of, the probably one of the worst mayors Wagga's ever seen, Rod Kendall, who had his snout and more chops than I can poke a stick at, that
allegedly,
that, and it was his. One thing I'll give him, though, I'll give credit where credit's due. He ran a decent meeting. I will give him that, and he worked hard for the city. I'll give credit where credit's due. But as far as once he wanted to rub shoulders with the likes of Labor, I mean, he's a closet socialist, if you ask me. He's a champagne socialist. He's done well, and he wants to pass that on, but all us plebs will just have to go without. But anyway, that said, they would never give actual accurate evidence in relation to these investigations. In fact, on that particular investigation, they never even interviewed the other councillors. Conkey, former mayor, Conkey, allegedly went round the staff the next day on one night when I really did disgrace myself. But saying, did you feel threatened? Quick, sign up here. Sign up. And he went around interviewing staff, allegedly, trying to get evidence, because they had this witch hunt. They didn't want the truth getting out. Because if you want to fix the problems in our state, clean out local government. But anyway, that's a story for another day.
No, that's the guts of it. And this is the whole thing that the general public don't see.
Correct.
And what they'll see is the headline in the paper. Disgraced former councillor.
Yep.
And that mud sticks.
Correct.
They've got nothing in the background, sir, and they don't understand just how there's no real basis to a lot of these allegations, and how there's no real interrogation of the fact, and there's no real proper due process in it. There's no right of reply. There's no real ability for you to defend yourself, even to the point that, and this is one thing people really have to take into account. Councillors are so exposed at the moment to all of this negative behaviour, and we can't even access the ability to have our legal costs met with the system that they've currently got in place. Now, the process that Temora Shire Council have got in place at the moment, if I want to request assistance with my legal costs, number one, it has to be approved by the council, and number two, I have to be successful. Now,
in your case,
how do
so
you
you
know?
have to
I
fight
have to
it
win.
again.
Yeah, that's
yes.
right.
So now,
Yeah.
but
And,
that's
and getting
so,
permission from the people who are obviously,
So,
at
but
loggerheads
in the
with you
meantime-
for, yeah, right,
Yeah, you
sure,
want
they're
to
going to vote for that.
Yeah.
now so far, and this has been reported in a public document in Temora Shire Council meetings. 2 years ago, council spent approximately $40,000 on codes of conduct against me. Last year, they spent another approximately $30,000. They've spent about $78,000 to date of ratepayers' money to date,
Yeah.
and they haven't reported this year's figures yet, and they're due to be reported in December. Now, I don't know what they've spent again. So, in round figures, and let's just ballpark it at 100 grand.
100. Yeah.
That's what they've spent in ratepayers' money. Now, I've had to spend a heap of my time. The Office of Local Government has spent a heap of taxpayers' money. So
Yeah.
we could, that's not including what they've spent on, well, we don't know, but
Staff time.
there could be,
Yeah, yes.
we could be
Well, it
talking,
all adds up.
Yeah.
well, when you've got the Office of Local Government, multiple investigators, it's significant. And it's negative, and it's not achieving anything, because I'm in my second term at council. They brought 4 codes of conduct against me in my first term, and none of those managed to have me
Dissuade
removed from
your
council or
voters,
dismissed. And I went to the next election, and I got the second most amount of votes in the first preference, as I did in the first election. So it had no sway on the voting public.
Yeah.
So all they're doing is really just, look,
Ripping up ratepayers' money.
ripping up ratepayers' money to try and
Yeah,
follow
yeah.
it.
Absolutely.
Now,
But it's to protect themselves.
but in
is what it's all
but in
about.
this document, the minister says, disappointingly, in recent years, it is apparent council's code of conduct are increasingly being weaponised
There you go.
to discourage or punish councillors for making legitimate public comment.
Correct.
Now, excuse
I didn't
me,
even make mine publicly.
but excuse me,
You didn't have
They
time.
did.
Yeah.
but the Department of
This
Planning,
document didn't exist.
That's right.
the Department of Planning are aware that this process is being weaponised. They haven't stepped in to stop it being weaponised. They haven't stepped in to protect councillors who are having the process abused against them. It's the most disgusting abuse of power, abuse of the process, and the body that can do something about it know about it, and yet here we are still waiting for the new code of conduct to come out, and they're still allowing these actions to be taken based on this code of conduct that they know is outdated and they know it's being weaponised. So
Sorry, the elephant in the room in that, though, is going back to a point you made before, is that the general manager actually has the option to deal with the matter, him or herself, in-house.
yes,
It does not have to be automatically referred no matter what the issue. And I can guarantee you that had the general manager had a set of kahunas and actually picked the phone up and said, look, which he had done in the past, over a comment that I put on Facebook because I called someone a clown, one of the planners a clown, but was happy to debate that person anywhere. But
Well, that's
and he
frowned
rang.
upon. Debating is not encouraged.
Well, apparently it's not encouraged. So I immediately took the post down, but that wasn't good enough. But anyway, regardless of that, the general manager, they have the ability to intervene and say, look, let's arbitrate this situation. So I'm sure if they had half an ounce of integrity, and that's the problem, there's no integrity. It's a protection scam.
yes,
About protecting their multi-$100,000 salaries they're on and lack of accountability. So it always leads back to economics. You know the old saying, always follow the money. So you've got these unelected bureaucrats who couldn't organise a chook raffle. I was nearly said something else that was wrong, but couldn't organise a chook raffle, earning hundreds of thousands of dollars, accountable to no one. And when we push the boundaries on these things, they get all antsy and say code of conduct on this or code. That's what I call about weaponizing. Now, I'm sure even in your cases, if the general manager, like we used to once upon a time, grabbed you by the scruff of the neck, dragged you around behind the dunny at the footy ground or something, and someone else has said, right, we've got to sort this out. We can sort it out, but they won't do that. They weaponize it and use this document.
but I'll tell you how ridiculous it is. Even after the first code of conduct, the only thing to come out of that was they found me. They raised, one of the matters was a pecuniary interest matter. They found there was no substance to that, so that was dismissed. And the other matter, they found that I'd behaved in an intimidating, bullying and harassing fashion towards another councillor. And the recommendation was that council engage or consider engaging a highly credentialed mediator to work through issues with myself and that
Another
other councillor.
bureaucrat.
No, but guess what? I'm up for that. They haven't gone ahead with it.
Of course.
So the very first code of conduct, they've spent all that money, they've put us all through the hoops. I spent probably 100 or 150 hours of my time writing submissions and finding information and going through the process. And the only recommendation to come out of it, council haven't pursued. Had council pursued that mediation at that point in time, then the second matter, the third matter, the fourth matter, and now the fifth matter might likely not have occurred.
You only have 5.
I'm only
You're
too
a bad
happy.
person.
I'm only too happy to sit down
My
and engage in
goodness.
mediation
I'm
because-
in good company. here.
because I want to sit down with a sensible person and put my cards on the table and say, this is what this person's done. This is what my response is. And have that other person say, this is what.
But you've nailed it for yourself. You want to sit down with a sensible person.
Yes.
And I'm not being smug.
No. But that's
There
exactly
is
right.
no common sense. It's not
No.
very common because it doesn't suit their narrative.
They don't
They
want.
must protect
They
their
don't
system.
want me to be considered
Of course not.
A voice.
measured and organised and justified in my actions. They don't want the fact that, like, how on earth can it be appropriate that someone can attack me on my own Facebook page and I respond with facts and I get the code of conduct?
Well, I think we've answered that in the last 10 minutes.
Absolutely.
It's been a
Yeah,
nice
yeah.
system. But it's
let's-
a merry-go-round. It's like
but-
a rat in a merry-go-round.
But let's go back to this, the whole idea, and we'll wrap it up pretty neatly, pretty quickly. But the Department of Planning, Housing and Infrastructure have got a document where they know that the current code of conduct process is inadequate. They know it's being weaponised. Now, surely they've identified that there's risks here. They've identified that this process is broken. So surely they've got to take responsibility and cease this ridiculous process immediately, because it's a risk assessment. If you, in any business, if you did a risk assessment and said it's being weaponised, it's not being used appropriately, it's causing detriment, it's costing ratepayers money, it's costing councillors, stress, loss of sleep.
And you're not
Financially-
achieving anything out at the end of the
It's
day.
not-
Exactly what you said.
And unlike people think in the public, it's not a full-time job, but it nearly takes a full-time job. And you're not exactly being remunerated like the unelected bureaucrats.
And we've got no protection. The
No.
general manager in Timor, and this is public knowledge because it's reported, the general manager gets a package
We report it all the time.
equivalent to
Yeah.
about
Well, ours is
Three-
on 400,000.
Timor's is on $300,000 a year.
Pretty good in tomorrow.
Well, if you
And
take,
accountable to who?
well,
Me and the other spin doctors.
Well, there
all
you go.
give it Thursday
no, but
night.
quite simply, obviously accountable to no one
Correct.
and can do no wrong, and will not tolerate any questioning of any of their actions or overruns or perceived mistakes or missteps or.
Don't get me started on those. Before
No.
I left council, just as an example, I actually, in questions with notice, made a statement. So it wasn't actually a question, it's one of they didn't shut me down, but actually exposed where council could have settled a matter where they were at fault, they were proven at fault over the extension of the taxiway at the airport.
Yes.
It ran out by quite a lot. The contractor, and I know because I've seen the documents, he was happy to settle for 50 grand. Done. He said, we'll all wear our losses. Give me 50 grand. No, Peter Thompson and his advisors, they said, no, we are not settling that. We are going to take this to litigation. And they lost. It ended up costing Wagga City Council $500,000.
Yes.
Not 50,000,
Yes.
because when it went to court, they actually found, you're actually owed a lot more than 50 or the 130 originally claimed.
Yes.
So they said, we'll go the whole lot. And of course, council then had to pay their legal fees plus a portion of his legal fees.
Yes.
And so it ended up costing $500,000. As I used to do in council, picked up the carpet and swept it under and done, bang.
Yes.
I mean, $1 million on Kooringal Road. They got a $2 million grant. Oh, we're going to do Kooringal Road because they had no jobs ready on the shelf. I mean, I used to talk about being shoebox ready for
Yes.
projects. If a grant comes along quick, pull it off, dust it off, the money's available. No, so they rushed around, completely buggered it up, and then ran to $3 million. Former councillor Rod Kendall said, well, I think it's pretty good because we actually got $3 million work done for $1 million because we ran over by $1 million and had to prop it up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the mentality that the
Well,
ratepayers
other-
need to understand
Other people's money.
other
It's easy
people's
to
money. But again, it's the champagne social.
But Mr. Kendall did. He suffered. He was subject to a code of conduct.
Yeah, he was.
Yes,
Mr.
I
Guy.
fancy that because he lied.
And he,
He
and
misled
he,
the people.
well, he
Not allegedly, he was found guilty.
he was found to have a pecuniary interest in the matter.
Correct.
He stayed in a meeting
Yep.
with a planning matter when he had a
Interest in it.
business relationship with
He had actually given advice
with
on
the
that
applicant?
particular- Yes,
Yes.
with the applicant, and he denied it on live television.
right. So, and he took. I think he was suspended for 1
1
month
month, as was I.
without pay.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, that to me is a far more egregious breach than anything that I consider I've done, and anything I've read that you may have done. Now, the only thing I can find fault with something that you've done is the fact that you made a personal insult and called someone a clown instead of just saying, look, the figures that you've presented are completely incorrect, and here's the facts.
And I'll wear that.
Yeah, and it was just a rush of blood or a.
Yep, that's
And,
all it was.
but quite simply, you
I was
killed.
pretty angry.
and it was a fair description of the idiot involved.
But it was inappropriate. It wasn't professional. It was
quite-
inappropriate.
yeah, and
And
quite
I'll wear that.
simply-
Spur of the moment.
But you can,
Yeah.
you can surely,
I'm a very
surely,
passionate individual who feel very strongly about
Yeah.
what
but
fucking
surely you're
corrupt
allowed.
bullshit
But
you
people,
are.
get passion mixed up with aggression.
Yes,
See,
very
that's the problem. They
confused.
can't decipher between.
But surely
the two.
you're allowed.
Absolutely.
Surely you're allowed to then come out publicly and own that error and make a public apology.
I would have been happy to,
And surely that's enough.
but I wouldn't have been given the opportunity. So what they did in previous cases, though, in the previous code of conduct where there was a thing found against me, I was to be censured, which again just goes to show how the stupidity of this process. I was censured, which actually means nothing. And as part of that, as you know, it's meant to be kept confidential, but Hayes and Keenan moved a motion in council to say that my name should be included in the resolution. Now,
No, council did
Now-
media releases for mine.
yeah,
They're on
so,
the front page of the paper.
so
They
if
wanted
that-
to get it out there.
Correct.
So
It's
everyone
gotta be
knew what was
weaponised.
going on.
Yeah, it's very important.
and they've spent all
Very
these
important.
tens of thousands of dollars on these codes of conduct because I was a bad person. I said these terrible things. And of course, part of that was also, they said, and that I was to apologise to council. So in that, I did. I stood in council at the next council meeting. I said, I've been told by the Office of Local Government or whoever it was that I have to apologise to council. And of course, they weren't happy with that, but I did what I was told. They might say I was
You
being
did what you were
smart.
told.
I did what I was
I
told.
was going to say, really?
I actually said they told me I had to apologise, and they sat there waiting for it. Well, I just read what I had to do. So you know, I probably shouldn't bait them so much, but well, that's what you're dealing with. It's a severe lack of integrity.
And there's just a lack of good ideas, a lack of common sense. And the big matters aren't getting dealt with. One of the big projects here that they can't seem to get a handle on is the heavy vehicle bypass.
The comments coming through.
Now it's a
Yeah.
30-year process here. Now I put forward a suggestion for a bypass for north-south traffic in Hoskin. I was howled down. I was attacked within council and I was attacked within the community. Now I'm the only person in council who's put forward a workable, fundable solution.
I better put in a declaration here because I'll back you on the need for that.
Yes.
My brother and family in West Wyalong used to have heavy transport, over dimensional loads and things like that. I know Dennis used to always cuss anytime. And he used to move some really big gear for John Holland and different people and mining equipment. Tomorrow was always a nightmare. You always had to factor into your bill the cost of a couple of rims and tyres.
Yes.
Because you cannot get through the roundabout that they built. Now, this is a town that's got a gold mine, or had a gold mine, that was shifting earth-moving equipment in and out. But so they built a roundabout that a float could not get around without damaging your lead.
And they did that. And they also narrowed the main street. They narrowed the main street. They widened the footpaths, narrowed the carriageway. And, they didn't narrow the carriageway. The carriageway remained the same, but they actually shortened the parking area. So there's less distance between the parked cars now and the carriageway, and the footpaths have been widened before they had the bypass. And they still haven't got a bypass, and they're not even within a bull's roar of a bypass.
I ask you, where's the bypass?
No, there's
I'm not aware of it.
No one else knows.
And there won't be because no one's
It's a 60-year imaginary project.
no one's even got the courage to put forward the proposed route and then to actually set aside some land for the proposed route. So the chances of it ever happening A
Like
zero.
there's enough.
Well, and
And
this
this-
is the whole thing. But
Where's the forward planning? Where's the vision? Now,
This is
this
what
doesn't-
happened in Wagga with their bypass.
Yes.
It should have been done back in the 80s.
Ah,
yes.
Let's get the easements and get all that. But now we're looking for a bypass and a second gob of bridge. How are we going to do it?
publish,
We
and you
haven't got
have
the
to,
land.
and you have to have the
Yeah.
courage.
Yeah.
Now, let me tell you, Hendo, on that note, I had a letter. I can't find at the moment, so I might have to say alleged. So I'm not
Oh,
quite
yeah.
sure I have it. I had a letter which was signed by a director of Transport New South Wales or whatever it was in the day. You know how it changes names. Well, actually, not as often as I change undies, but you get the gist. So, and it said on that, and it was to, what's our old mate? Tyson.
Warren Tyson. Yeah.
He doesn't have it now. But anyway, it said when he was on this mission about the bypass that Wagga Transport or RMS would not even investigate a bypass for Wagga until we reached 130,000 population or 2043, whichever comes first. They would then start the investigation. Now, that director is still with Transport New South Wales. I won't name him because it would be inappropriate for me to do so because he would have been doing what he was doing in his role. But that goes back 6 or 7 years. That's not going to happen in my lifetime or your lifetime.
Oh, it might come sooner with the immigration we've got going
Well,
on. We're going to get our population up.
I was
They
talking
want
to a
9
fella.
million in Melbourne.
Don't
9
get
million
me
in Melbourne's the
started.
plan. Oh, we're definitely going to get started at some
No.
point tonight. So
I
just
know
also,
but I know
sorry.
a guy in Echuca who's over 70, and he was at trade school when they started talking about the second Murray crossing down at Echuca,
Oh,
Moama,
yes,
and
yeah.
they've only just
Just completed
opened it in the last couple of years.
So our country, at every level of governance, local, state, and federal, has been lacking any vision, forward planning for decades now. Now we can all get on our bandwagon, and I know this is going to come back and bite me later. Someone's going to say I'm being all political, but
This is a political
yeah.
program.
But the point is, it is a political program. I don't care what caliber our politicians have been. I'm talking for 30 plus years.
Yes.
I mean, when was the last dam built? When was the last? I mean, the Hume Highway, and I remember having been in the smash industry, heavy transport smash industry in the 80s and 90s and into the noughties, and we know how big that industry was. The Hume Highway was supposed to be duplicated in 1988. Bob Hawke stood there, and I think it was the 10 by 10 whatever fuel fund. It was all going to be done. I don't think it's finished yet, or it might be completed now, but there's sections need remediating, and they're now talking about the Gundagai Bridge, which I know there's always ongoing maintenance, but it was 30 years late, 30 years. So that's the main arterial road between the two busiest cities in our
It's
country.
Highway 1.
So where is our forward planning, our forward thinking? They allowed subdivisions and developments, and this is where it comes back to council. It's also going to be interesting with these proposed changes in the planning. I notice you keep holding up this document about planning, because the planners are always the one. They're very touchy. They love codes of conduct, and their union is extremely powerful. And that if they get a bee in their bonnet, they will come after you. Make no mistake, I can speak to that.
Yes.
So the point is, though, they are so touchy because you try and get something approved. It is so arduous. It's one of the great problems we face in Wagga. But what I often say to people in Wagga, it's not unique to Wagga. It's just that happens to be where we live. This is a common problem in this state. But I believe the Minns government, which I hate to give them any credit, but if it's true, they're talking about this new planning process where over a certain dollar value, it automatically goes to Sydney for approval, which does have my concerns about centralising power. But otherwise, it's got to be approved in X amount of days, or it's just automatically approved. Now, I might have that a little bit wrong, but there's moves on that. At least someone's finally doing something. It might reduce the codes of conduct.
But even the planning process is so convoluted, they've almost planned themselves into a corner where they can't actually make a decision.
Correct.
There's that many rules. But
unless it suits them.
yes, but this is the thing. That's one area where AI could come in, because really it's just, does it tick that box, it goes there. If it ticks that box, it goes there. And it just drafts it off through the process. Now, AI can do that. That takes out all the nepotism, all the stupidity, all the mistakes, and it gets rid of a huge amount of bureaucrats.
Correct. There's part of your budget fix.
Yes, and all of a sudden,
Reduce our wages.
but all of a sudden,
Yeah.
it's a transparent process because everyone gets treated the same.
That's right. And this then goes back to if some politician, heaven help, should come along with some sort of vision and say, gee, we want to build a new dam in every state. Well, I mean, you've got to get around the red tape, the green tape, the black tape, the bureaucratic tape. all that nonsense, or heaven forbid, a nuclear power station or
Yes.
a coal-fired power station. I mean, one's open every however many days it is in China, which we sell them cheap coal, and we can't have them here. But again, that's a complete different debate.
But that's
Sorry, all I've been is that politicians need to grow a set of kahunas, stand up, because the majority of the people in this country would follow them.
yes.
So this is where you mix up aggression with passion.
Yeah. People are screaming out for some strong leadership.
People are looking for something
desperate
now.
for it.
Absolutely.
We are
And
desperate.
The biggest, and back on the coal, we're quite happy to sell China the coal.
Correct.
And they burn it in China, and there's no fences up in the sky to keep the pollution over China.
Depends
So
on the way
pol-
the winds
yeah,
blow.
the pollution
Oh.
ends up over here anyway.
Well, they
So-
don't have enough wind turbines to blow it, you see. And
Yeah.
all solar panels.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry.
So-
yeah,
but
sorry.
that's-
All right.
And that's the stupidity. And here we are paying the highest power prices in the world.
Correct.
Australia's given away all its natural advantage. We should be one of the wealthiest countries in the world. And look, the one thing I always say is I really do enjoy a high standard of living, and I love
Absolutely.
the lifestyle I've got, but I don't want to squander it, and I don't want to see it lost for future generations. And the stupid decisions that are being made, I fear, are gonna, the opportunities that I've enjoyed aren't going to be afforded to the future generations and my kids and my grandkids.
But they're going to be
Yeah.
destitute paying the bill that our idiotic generation
Yes,
has created.
yes,
We're $1 trillion in debt.
yes.
Whether you love Howard or not, and Costello, almost Abbott and Costello, but Howard and Costello, they paid down our debt. We were debt free. We had a future fund.
Yes.
Here we are, 20 years later, not even that, and we're $1 trillion in debt. We don't, they say employment's out of control, or unemployment is starting to rise. The immigration is swamping our nation out of control. What were the figures? 1,200 a day. Work that
And the
down.
infrastructure's behind already.
We-
Hospitals are behind.
As I just-
Ambulances are behind.
how many-
Everything's behind.
How many new, I'll go back to my dams. How
Yes.
many new dams?
Yes.
How many schools, hospitals, police?
Yes.
Well, we can't have police because you want to let these people who actually want to burn our flag, which I think should be a criminal offence, they want to burn our flag and worry about a war that's going on that is just so ridiculous and out of control that's going on in the Middle East.
They've been fighting each other since long before Australia was even a country.
Since
the fact
Noah
that
was a boy.
So the fact that our idiots are sitting here in local councils is
Correct.
even worse than our federal politicians. You've got idiots in local councils.
Writing letters.
You can't even get the rubbish collected on time, you dumb fucking humps. But you're going to send a letter to Netanyahu saying you're committing a genocide. You think he's going to pay attention to you because you're an overindulged idiot. That's what you are. If you're sitting there as a local councillor
Again,
banging on a door at Gaza or Israel or whichever one of them are a bunch of bastards this week, you're an absolutely overindulged moron. There is no way in the world they know who you are. They don't care who you are. I'm pretty confident they don't know who Australia is. Hamas knows.
I can't. Yeah, well, they
How
know
about
who we
a
are
little
because
tickle in the
well,
arse?
they're now sending the ISIS brides out here and this type of nonsense. I mean, this country is so out of control. Our forebears will be rolling in their grave. I mean, you're right, Irv. I do enjoy this standard of living. And I remember when the carbon tax was being floated by Julia Gillard, and I was on the speaking circuit actually with other people. There was, funnily enough, there were the rallies in Hyde Park and Canberra and other areas in Sydney and things. I remember one in particular, I was speaking there to represent the costs of what was happening with the electricity with irrigation, because I was irrigation farming at the time. And I've never forgotten Bronwyn Bishop, the old biddy. She's well coy. She turned up probably in a Rolls Royce. I don't know. She turned up. She walked up into the stage. I had to follow her. Like Barnaby had been on. He ripped them a new one. She got up there and she almost was like this. It was quite funny. And she said, "Labor would have you living in a cave with a candle. The Greens would take away the candle." And I thought, I have never forgotten that, but I thought it is so true. But the problem we face now, the very party she was representing, they would too.
They would too.
They cannot even come to a decision on net zero. Now, whether you believe or don't believe in climate change, well, of course, climate change is real. Now, before you bash me to death in this room, the point is it's been changing since the dawn of time. But is it human-induced? Well, no, the experts aren't. The jury's not out on that. We are not doing it. There's so much evidence. But again, follow the money. Look where the grants go.
4.5 billion years. There's been ice stages. There's been all sorts of shit.
They don't include
But
that.
in the last 200 years, the temperature's changed and we need to panic.
Well, let's put it this way: Fort Denison is still, the water's still at the same level where we measure the oceans. I was actually at a political conference in Hobart. Probably, actually, I can tell you, it'd be 12 years ago because it was my wife's birthday weekend. I missed it. So, anyway,
you bastard!
I know I'm a bad husband, bad father. But anyway, we were outside the Greens office in Hobart. I can't remember. It may have been Christine Milne. I just can't remember. And she's in Constitution Bay. I think that's the name of it, where the sandstone dock is and everything. And there's markings on the sandstone walls that the convicts carved in the wall. It hadn't changed. And yet they are the very people saying we're all going to drown, it's the end of the world, blah, blah, blah. Again, it's a religious ideology. But regardless of all that, we are leaving our future generations absolutely just loaded with this debt. I can't think of an adjective that I can say on air that's polite. That we are just absolutely persecuting future generations. Look at the fact. Look, they talk about a housing crisis. Well, I wonder why. It's linked not just with net zero, but also the immigration. We are flooding the country. That doesn't make a person racist because we actually want to defend our country. We want to defend our constitution. We want to defend our way of life. Not only that, the statistics came out last week. It was announced even last week. 14% of the immigrants that come into this country will fill our labour shortage. So what's the other 86% for? It's to prop up a false economics, to pump up our GDP. It's about getting votes for this Labor government that really needs to be kicked out, but we can't do that unless someone can come up and save us. We don't have a Nigel Farage, we don't have a Donald Trump or a Giorgia Meloni or what's his name in Argentina. But I will make an announcement. Yes. I'm starting a One Nation branch in Wagga on the 21st of this month. Now, because they do have policies on these areas. Liberal Party might be disappointed because I was considering joining them. There's a lot of good people in there. And as far as governing body, I guess people would say, well, that's our only hope. But where are they? They're absent.
Yes.
They're missing in action. And unless they get pressure put on them externally, some would say, "Oh, you've got to get inside the tent." Yeah, the problem is everyone's inside the tent. But they've all gone to sleep. They're asleep at the wheel.
Yeah, I think that tent's a bit smelly, and I think it's a bit broken and probably a bit mouldy. Probably needs to be put out to pasture.
It's so disappointing. They're on a listening tour. As I said at a function a couple of weeks ago where Dave Sharma was present, that I said the listening tour was held in May this year. It was called an election. Yeah. And they got their head handed to them on a platter because they couldn't make a decision. Oh, we're going to work from home. No, we're not going to work from home. Oh, no, we still want to meet net zero figures. We've got to get out of the UN. We've got to get out of the Paris agreements. We've got to start looking after our own country. We've got to bring in tax reform. And when you actually look around all the parties, and no offence to any other minor parties, I'm not here to kick them around.
No.
Because we all have our slight little differences and things like that. One Nation is there. They're kicking goals. They are doing the job. They have never wavered in their decision. It's 30 years next year since Pauline Hanson got elected. She's still there. They put her in jail. We're worried about codes of conduct. They put her in jail because she was saying what they didn't like. I believe they are the answer. I actually believe if enough people fought and supported a political party, we could make change. But that's the only way I can see happening in this country.
I don't agree with everything Pauline says, but the best thing about Pauline is the person that goes to bed that night is the same person that gets up the next morning, is the same person that goes. She says that what she says in the morning is the same thing she's saying in the afternoon, where the majority of the populist politicians will wait until an opinion poll comes out and then they'll change the paper.
What do we believe in today?
Quick, what's my answer today? Quick.
Now, Albo was on a listening tour down at Ballarat, and I don't think it went very well for him. And
it wasn't very good even the one in Wagga where he flew
out. And I think Jacinda Allen's tone deaf, because she's being told a lot of things down there, particularly in relation to the Country Fire Authority volunteers and the emergency services tax they're trying to bring in, and that's just crucifying the bush communities.
They want to actually tax into oblivion the very people that are going to save their state, that put their lives on the line.
There's people there in the CFA who've been there for 30 years, and they're being taxed to the moon. And they've been volunteers for 30 years on the CFA, saving other people's property.
And lives. Yes. Don't forget the lives. Yes. But lives in Australia don't matter unless you're from some other country somewhere that doesn't have the freedom and way of life that we have.
It's horrendous. It's just, and this is but that's what the alternative.
Can you?
Richard Foley was a little bit correct when he.
A little bit.
I know where you're going.
And I know Richard's
When he
watching
said
tonight. Richard is here tonight.
He
Richard's
said the
in the
majority of
audience.
voters are dumb as dog shit because
He said something a little
sit
bit
there.
different, but I get
Yeah,
your point.
yeah,
but they sit there and they can't even work out. Like the problem is the politicians. The problem is their lies, and the problem is their bullshit, and no one's holding them to account.
And the machine's built to
Yes,
protect
and we
them.
have an opportunity
So-
to hold them to account at the elections, and we don't do it. And then we sit there and we wonder why we're making less money, and we wonder why our power bills are going up. Well, the answer is the dickheads you just elected.
Yeah.
But who elected them?
Yes,
Not
We-
me. Not
we
me. Not me.
Our
No,
generation.
It's also worth remembering that the large majority of the voting public are in the cities and they haven't got a fucking clue. So I sat there on election night. I happened to be at a 40th birthday party, and I'm probably the only super politically inclined person that was at that birthday party. No, not me at all. No, I don't pay any attention to how we're getting raped and pillaged by those above at all. But, you know, the discussion was, and I walked in, Albo's got a hope in hell, has he? I said, he'll shit this in. I said, no, fuck, I don't have anyone who voted for him. But no, nobody out here does.
Correct.
Nobody out here does, but we're so insignificant in the grand scheme of things, currently, sadly, and we're silly enough to think that we're having an impact. We're so far from having an impact, it's not funny.
the biggest figure that demonstrates that is the one I keep rolling out. 87% of Australia's population live within 50 km of the coast.
Correct.
Now that leaves 13% to be spread throughout this vast interior. So even if every single one of that 13%, which isn't going to happen, agree wholeheartedly, that's still a drop in the ocean. So we are living lives being dictated to by people who've got no concept of living in the regional area.
Chocolate milk and brown cows.
Yeah, well, there you go. But this is where my argument is that if we can change seats in the bush, you're right about the minimal numbers.
Yes.
Because at the moment, we keep re-electing the same people.
Yes.
Everyone says, oh, Michael's such a nice bloke. Yeah, well,
But,
So, yeah, he's doing
so,
something.
but what's he done?
Yes.
Oh, they'll say, he's now brought this bill, co-authored this bill about net zero. Yes, but in 2022, he proudly spruiked that he was responsible for the Nats signing up to net zero. I mean, again, it
when
goes
they were
back to
in
this.
power.
When they were in power, that's right. They were in power.
So
for
he can
10
do what he
years.
likes in
He could have
opposition.
done.
I tuned him up when him
Yeah.
and Barnaby come out all of that, 2 months ago.
Yep.
Oh, this is bullshit, blah, 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 blah. Every time I'd see him banging on that. Hey, Michael, now, obviously he knows me.
Yeah.
Michael, how come when you were the Deputy Prime Minister, you didn't come out and say net zero is bullshit?
Yeah.
How come now that you've got no power, no say, no
And you can
fucking
say
influence
whatever you
whatsoever, all of a sudden
You
you're
can
doing
make as
that?
many
How
promises as you
come
like.
now that we're at this stage of your career where, let's be fair, you're looking for your next $300,000-$400,000 a year payday, you're all of a sudden ingratiatingly wiggling your tongue in the bottom of the fossil fuel companies because none of the lefty companies are going to give you a job.
So can you imagine what would happen politically in this country imagine if you tipped Michael out? Imagine if you tipped Steph Cook out. Oh, she'd go to the opening of an envelope, but she might be hardworking. But what have they actually done? If you don't disrupt, if you don't actually change the direction of where our politics is going, because it is, you're right in what you said, it's the absolute example, or what is it, the definition of stupidity.
Yes.
To keep doing the same thing and something's going to change. That's why I was mentioning earlier, where's the vision that our...
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine in the late 1880s when Mackay pumped some water from the Murrumbidgee River over there near Colliamby, wherever it was, we wouldn't have the Snowy Mountain Scheme. We wouldn't have the Snowy Highway. Number one, not two, I'm talking
But all
about.
And we can't build number two. We can't build number two. We're having issues.
We can't build fucking anything in this
hang on,
country
hang on,
anymore.
man, there's something pretty close to you.
But I'll tell you, I was working.
Build solar farm. Don't worry about
Oh, we
that.
can build them, but you
I was
talk about-
working with an old fella at Genmain years ago, right? And he was an old, hard-working man. And I said to him, his name was Jim. And I said, Jim, what did you do for a job when you were a kid? And he said, me and my brother Clive, we cleared a block of ground. And I said, how'd you do that? And he said, we did it with axes and Truella jacks.
Yep.
And they would go up to a tree, they'd cut a notch in the tree, they'd put the jack in, and they'd start jacking, click, clack, click, clack. They'd lift up a root, they'd cut through the root, they'd move around the tree, and eventually they'd do it enough times, the tree would fall over, they'd light a fire on it, they'd move on to the next tree. I said,
Well, you're not
"Geez."
allowed to light a fire without a permit.
I said, that'd have been, well, that'd have been hard, Jacker. I said, what'd you get paid? He said, half the first year's crop. Now, of course, that's a fair way in the distance.
Yeah.
I said, well, what'd you live on in the meantime? He said charity and rabbits. Like, they were living in the paddock, they were felling the timber in, they were living off the smell of Vanawelli rag, and they're the people who broke their backs. Like,
and they're the people who built this nation.
Yes.
And they were brave. They had courage not only to do that. And I've read stories, or I know my wife's read books and things about the women in the West
yes,
that lived in these tin shacks, and the men would be off on horse or on foot for weeks at a time. And they then signed up and went to war
Yes.
to fight for a war that wasn't even Australia's initially,
yes,
but went to war to fight and defend this nation. But we can't get a politician brave enough
yes,
to actually stand up and say this net zero is nonsense.
Yes.
They were in power for 10 years, and but now I'm going to bring a motion all these years later where it's
And when Barnaby rolled it out, they all fucking dogged him anyway.
Correct.
That's how hopeless the Nats are.
even to the
let
point,
alone the libs.
even to the point,
That's-
no one wants to pollute yourself into oblivion.
Correct.
It's just simple. The idea, one thing I've heard translated from an Asian country was the bloke who should have the most say in a catchment is the bloke at the bottom.
Yep.
Because he's the one who's copping everyone else's shit going past his
That's
front
very
door.
true.
So
That's a good point.
that's pretty pertinent. Now, we don't want to pollute this joint into oblivion, but the same thing applies. We've been blessed with all these natural resources, and I cannot find a business case that can tell me that it's cheaper to dig the iron ore out, ship it to the port, ship it all the way to China, ship all the coal over to China, ship all the coking coal to China, smelt it down over there, and then ship it all back over here. And that is cheaper than doing it here.
But hang on, not only cheaper, Irv, how's the carbon footprint looking?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
All
zero.
the heavy
Correct.
oil, the fuel oil they burn, getting it over and back. And I'm still trying to find a ratio. Now, how many tons of iron ore actually turns into 1 ton of pure clean steel? And how many tons of coal and how many tons of coking coal does it take to convert that? So how many tons goes over as opposed to how many tons come back? And what is the actual true environmental cost of that as opposed to doing it in Australia with Australian jobs, with Australian people, using Australian electricity made from Australian coal, mined by Australian people, and providing jobs and income, and mining the iron ore here, and then having the ability then to sell boatloads of that product to the world as the highest quality steel in the world.
You're just being racist because you don't want
So
China making
are you
lots of money.
telling me
obviously.
you actually want jobs and a
and
Manufacturing. That's outrageous.
you're on a different planet there.
Yeah.
But it's interesting on
Our
that
economy
point.
to pick up.
Yes,
It's actually interesting on that point. It came out again last week or early this week, where Australia is now. I mean, I've always said a nation is what a nation makes, or a nation is what a nation manufactures. We manufacture nothing.
No.
Or we might do 34 flip screens a year, I think. But let's not get me started on that. That's for another day. But anyhow, on that point, we are now almost, the federal government is almost to the same level of subsidies to the electric vehicle market in Australia as we were subsidising our car manufacturing in Australia.
Yes.
So what we have done is shut down our car manufacturing, as we said, we can't do it anymore. The subsidies are outrageous, but there was tens of thousands of people employed, let alone the flow-on effect, the second and third levels. But we're now spending the same amount in subsidies to build an electric vehicle, which comes from China. Heaven forbid there's someone who tried to call off a sister city relationship with China. But anyway, I'm meant to be restrained and detained. But that said, we're spending the same amount and we don't make anything.
yes.
Do people not understand this?
That's the
So I actually even
stupidity of it.
beg the Labor voters. Yes, they had no one else to vote for. But really, my blue heeler, and he's that fat, he's more like a wombat, would be smarter than this.
Oh, look, I'll roll my 12-year-old in there, and my money's on him coming up with better policies. Right?
So anyway,
you run a business, you know the costs involved, and you know.
Well, you were telling me about the electricity coming out of it.
Yeah, like, even just at the club,
Yeah.
boat club, right? The power bill now is $1,000 a month,
Yes.
$1,000 a week, should
Yes.
I say?
Yes.
We had to put solar on the roof
Yes.
to reduce that.
Yeah.
We pay the solar off at $500 a week,
Yeah.
$500 a month,
Yeah.
and we reduced our electricity by $1,400 a month.
Mm.
Why did we have to do it?
Mm.
Because electricity went up
Mm.
$300 a week.
Well,
So much for the discount.
Well, I hate to break the bad news to you, Endo. It's going to
gonna
go up
go up
again
again.
because just this, the one leg from Wagga, what's it called? Can't think of the name.
HumeLink.
It-
HumeLink's
No,
going
not
up.
the HumeLink, the other one. But anyway,
The one
it's-
going down to South Australia.
yes, it's gone
Yep.
from 1.8 to 3.6 billion. They've
Mm.
just announced, and they've applied to AEMO, which is the Australian
Yeah.
Electricity Regulator, to pass that cost for those poles and wires to the consumer.
Yeah.
So, Hendo, sorry,
Mm.
your bill's
It's
going to
gonna
go up.
go
again.
up.
They're also starting the build from the Snowies, the new Snowy 2 project, up to Bowral or somewhere close to Sydney, and that's called HumeLink.
That's right, yeah.
And they haven't even got all the property agreements in place,
Correct.
so they don't even know what the costs are going
So
to
it's on a path to nowhere.
Well, they're going to have to get it done, but at what cost?
But will they ever finish Snowy 2.0? I mean,
Nah.
it was supposed to be 2 billion. I think it's up to officially 14 or something
Yeah,
now, isn't it? Or
so
whatever.
you'd have to round it out to
Round
20.
it to 20.
And
And they're nowhere near finished. No. They still don't know if the technology is going to work. And yet, that's what I was saying before, 60 or 70 years ago, they could build it.
well, there's limited storage in it because pretty much it's a bit of an old model, the one they're running, and the old model was pump the water up
Using battery power.
using coal power back
Oh,
in
coal
the day
power,
when
sorry,
coal
yeah.
power was cheap
Sorry,
at the
back
middle of
in
the
day,
night.
Yes, yeah.
They'd pump the water up to the top of the hill, and then in the daytime, when they needed the power in the morning, they could run it down through the turbines and get paid 3 times as much or 5 times as much as what they paid to pump it up.
Yeah.
How that's going to work now with the solar situation and flipping it back on its head, and when the cheap power is going to be there, and
The sun don't shine in.
yeah, so they might be able to,
So they.
they
Well,
might be able to-
No,
What?
it doesn't.
What?
Oh, no,
But hang on, didn't you see the reel of that
Surely.
little lefty chick that said, if they can't get to the sun during the day, why don't they do it overnight?
Yeah.
I mean, do you not see these things?
These
That's-
people are morons.
I know.
There's not even an if, buts, or maybes.
It's going to be
If you're on
interesting just
council,
to
you get a
see
code for that.
to see how much
I don't
how-
care.
how
Whatever.
commercially viable it's going to be.
Correct.
Yeah.
But just the bill, and of course, it's not this whole rewiring. This is what, again, most Australians, because they're disconnected from the political discourse, and that's what the major parties wanted.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, everything comes back to politics because they're the people who make the laws, the legislation, make the decisions, and they've purposely, sorry, Dana,
No,
they
you're
purposely, the majors have disconnected the people from the political interest on purpose. So you just stay over there and remain silent and a bunch of sheep, and we'll tell you what's good for you.
And the mainstream media have
Right.
participated.
Oh, the
with it.
mainstream media is so complicit,
Yeah.
so complicit. They've been brought up. We saw that through COVID.
Yes.
We saw that recently, even with the marches. Look at the English march. There's potentially up to 3 million people, and they said, I actually only watched it this morning. And said there was 110,000 people. There was something like 2 or 3 million people.
You
They are
people are
complicit in
lying dead
this.
shits. They're absolutely.
So this is why. Let me say.
And that's what it needs to get back to. We need to, and this is what I've discovered through these few videos I've been doing the last couple of months that are going a bit silly, right?
Yeah.
I'm not playing politics anymore. I'm not trying to be statesman-like. I don't fucking care anymore about any of that ass kiss.
Yep.
And I've been in the political space,
I know
and people
you
say
have,
to me,
yep.
they go, "Oh, dude, and you've seen me on
I
a
know.
public stage. I can be
I know.
very politically correct. I can do a speech without going, 'You people are morons.' I'm not doing it anymore, right? Because they don't deserve to be treated that well anymore. And where we're at is the media are lying pricks. Most of the politicians are jellyfish, i.e., spineless cowards
I
who
actually
need
said
to
that
be
to the
treated
mayor once.
like.
I know what a jellyfish looks like standing up there.
Mm.
But now what I'm seeing is it's starting to resonate.
And
These
that's the
people are
point.
starting to catch on. There are people here who
They
are
need
going,
education.
this is, yeah, absolutely that. And this is what this program's all about. That's, I believe you gentlemen might possibly be starting a program in due time.
Hence why we're here.
Hence
Yeah,
why they're here.
this is a bit of a pre-run.
This is a bit of a pre-run.
Pre-run.
Bit of a pre-run, ladies and gentlemen, and me obviously trying to coach the lads how to drive the technology. But I think it was great that Jared Rennick showed up the other week.
Yes.
Now, I'm not sold. I'm not going to follow Jared Rennick over a wall at Gallipoli, but I like him, and I'd love to see him back in Parliament. I think his politics are generally pretty good, and he showed a massive backbone through COVID. I like Pauline. I'm still sceptical to see how the branch rollout's going to work. Pauline and James Ashby letting go of the reins of this little boat that they've built is going to be a very interesting process. The Libertarians, we all know I've got a massive history with them, and I've stepped right away in practical terms, but that's who I still vote for. I look at this, I will be at your meeting.
Let me tell you again. Tuesday, the 21st of October.
Absolutely. And I'll
Tuesday, the
I'll
21st of October, 6 p.m. at the RSL Club in Wagga at the Pacific Lounge, I think it's called. So Tuesday, 21st of October, Senator Malcolm Roberts will be there to speak. Sean Bell was going to be there. He's actually unfortunately got previous commitments because there is so much on the go now as to
And
rolling
the
out
Sean
One
Bell
Nation.
thing was one of the things that
It was
sort of
one
made
of
me go, really? That was disappointing
It
for me.
was.
But
some,
look, I look
I
at it.
understand
I'm
that.
gonna promote the shit out of it as well.
Yep.
I'll be there for that particular
Thank you.
event.
At least we got one.
Well,
No, I'm
I
on
didn't.
attention.
I didn't really cotton on to Jared Rennick being there until the day off. But I'll tell you, there was probably 100 people in the room, give or take 100. Could have been a few more. Some people said 70. I did a bit of a head count, and I stood at the back of the room because I like to do head counts.
Yep.
I think it was probably closer to 100, 110.
Yep.
And that was including people coming in, and a few people sit there for 20 minutes and then bugger off. But really good turnout for that. I'm great friends with Stuart Bonds in One Nation, and I've said to Stuart that if he's leading the ticket for New South Wales at the state election, I will, for all intents and purposes, be waving an orange flag to get Stuart Bonds into Parliament. He needs to be there. He should be there. And if I have to team up with One Nation in Wagga to help drive him into that building, he's a bloke who I would go over a wall at Gallipoli with the Stuart Bonds, no problem at all. And that's what I'm looking for in a politician. That's what I'm looking for if I'm going to get involved. I'm no longer looking at parties just for whatever's on the label. I mean, look, the Libertarians love them to bits, but I'm looking for somebody now in this country, the state that it's in. And I hope it doesn't have to be me doing it because I don't think I've got the brains. But that's what I'm looking for. I want politicians or people who are going to stand up. Don't even have to be politicians. Who are going to show some nuts.
Conviction.
Who are going to have the balls to call this stuff out and put their head on.
People with experience.
Even if they're not intelligent, but they've
the
got
real
good,
world.
intelligent people around them.
Academic intelligence does not mean someone's going to be.
No. I mean common sense.
Common sense.
Beg your pardon?
And really, when you're in a room, and you're trying to get something done, you don't really want to be the smartest person in the room. You want to surround yourself with smarter people because you might have the vision, you might have the plan. It was a bit like we were going to have a nuclear forum in Wagga with some really keynote speakers. Hendo met a couple of them. We had Helen Cook, her name is. She's a legal expert in nuclear law, and she was actually putting off a trip to the Middle East to sign up a plant over there to come to Wagga. But who did we get white-handed and undermined by? The local Liberal branch and members of the Liberal Party.
Of course.
This is the point. Wagga was in a key position to actually, despite what people think, and in fact it only happened by accident that it came about, where we could actually have two small modular reactors. We have the water, we have the space, the substation. We've got everything there,
and you're going to have the connection to the grid.
Correct.
So you can send it to South Australia, you can send it to Sydney.
We are smack in the middle of the Eastern Seaboard grid, and yet it got white and undermined by the Liberal Party. So they're not serious. As I said, I was at this function with Dave Sharma a couple of weeks ago, or listening to Dave Sharma. Hell of a nice bloke. There's a classic example. I believe he got 100 out of 100 or something. He's HSC, delivered a beautiful speech. Seems a really nice bloke. Couldn't answer the most fundamental question. He's tiptoed around it, danced around it, couldn't have any conviction. Well, there you talk about people letting go of the reins. They're not going to let go of the reins because they're on these junkets and they're on big wickets. And
most of them have never done a job outside of politics. If they're off that gravy train, they do not know how to earn a living.
And this is why I've landed with One Nation on this basis. Yes, I hope you're wrong on, well, not that you're saying it's going to happen, but I hope it is a case where the branches do grow and some relaxation has gone. Obviously, I've been in a minor party before, and I know it's like trying to herd wild cats because you get people with conviction and integrity, and they're hard to handle. So what they have done, they've actually put in place a process. Robbie Elson, I think his name is, he's actually in charge of the branch rollout. It's a grassroots campaign that they don't care whether state, local or federal, but they want feedback from what's affecting my area, your area, the next branch's area, to feed it up the chain. Do you know, even just with reconnecting rivers, and I won't bore you to death with all that, but they're going to put easements over our land. Fundamental property rights are being taken by the state. We've got members of the Liberal Party who are affected by this, but they don't even want to do anything about it in Wagga at the branch level and write policy. It takes years to get policy done. One Nation has already got these policies in place, and this is why I'm saying I'm on board with them. I hope it goes the way we expect, but my point is their position has never changed in the almost 30 years whether it be net zero, whether it be immigration, whether it be taxation. I mean, even their family taxation policy, and income splitting,
that's what I respect
all these
about that
factors.
party.
They've actually got answers. Yes, I can find all the problems, as we all can, but they actually do have solutions to make our life better. And that's why I want to go with them.
And Pauline, deep down in her heart, wants Australia to do really, really
It's
well.
successful.
Yeah, and she loves it. Clearly loves it. And
Absolutely.
she doesn't want to see the Australia that she knows and loves disappear.
No, that's right.
Now, we're all a welcoming community, and we really do embrace multiculturalism, but we don't want to be swamped by it. We don't want to see the fabric of our society be
Well, it's getting torn up.
unrecognisable.
It's getting torn up.
Yes. And like, I went down to Paul Kelly and saw a concert. He's at Rod Laver Arena in Melbourne a month ago. At the same time, we were sitting in Rod Laver listening to Paul Kelly sing songs and having a fat time. There was a couple of kids getting chased through the outer western suburbs of Melbourne and chopped up in the street.
Yeah.
And that's in Australia.
Yeah.
And that shit shouldn't happen.
But there's a machete bin will save that.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like,
yeah, I know. It's nonsense.
so things are changing.
Think about those poor kids.
The
their
reality
families.
is diversity is not our strength. That's a
Well-
bullshit. That's a bullshit bit of fundamental. It's like this other thing that's been running out about social cohesion. They're bullshit arguments. They don't count for anything. What diversity? Which part of the diversity of some prick hacking up another kid with a machete is? That's our strength. Bullshit.
Multiculturalism doesn't work. It's a failed experiment. Integration and assimilation will work.
Well,
and this nonsense.
It worked with the Greeks. It worked with the Italians that came here. It worked
Polish,
with the Chinese.
The Second
that
World
came here.
War, post Second World War period, was an entire different period. And what was interesting, and I had a lot to do with foreigners or immigrants when I worked in Sydney, and they used to stand there in this broad accent and go, I'd say, because I grew up in a small town like Wollongong where you had two Greeks because there was two cafes. You had one Italian who had the fruit market, and you had one Chinaman because we had a Chinese shop. Otherwise, everyone was Anglo-Saxon. So I was interested in people from somewhere else. I'd say, where are you from? I'd say, me, Aussie. This broad accent. And I'd say, oh, right, okay.
And
yeah.
they loved it, and they were
loved
proud of it, and that's
Correct.
what they wanted to be.
Correct.
These guys want to come here, guys, girls, whatever, and they basically want to say, you're going to submit to us.
Correct.
You're going to join our fucking squad, and you lot are all racist if you don't turn around and
It's not
take
happening.
Allah as your Lord and Saviour. Fuck off.
And we got our own rules, and we're keeping them.
We're coming, yeah, we're coming to your
trying,
country.
yeah.
Well, isn't it
That's
classic?
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the classic example of that just recently, where even, and I will say quite openly, I was watching Paul Murray here one night. I very quickly turned it off again. Joe Hildebrand, I actually can't remember who the Liberal member was on his Liberal or National was on his show leading up to the last Australia March. I went to
I saw
Canberra
that.
that weekend, along
Yes.
with many thousands of others. I've never seen so many Australian flags. And they actually said, wouldn't touch this with a barge pole. This is, they're extreme
They're all
right-wing
racist
Nazis.
and-
Now, this was the people, and yet they had nothing to Gaza marches, which is just, don't get me started on, I'll just leave that over the Harbour Bridge. I don't know what these people are using for common sense. They actually had flags of terrorist outfits, all this type of thing. Burnt our flag. Like, I have had multiple generations, as most of us had, people die under that flag for this country, or know someone that has.
That's all the freedoms that
And-
we enjoy have been hard won. And
Correct.
People just want to give them away for nothing.
And yet our politicians want to suppress that. And that, we shouldn't go near these marches.
Our
Seriously?
politicians are corrupt, so that's a whole fucking
Correct.
screaming lot. Pauline showed up in Canberra, I believe.
Yes, she did.
I was up there with some medical stuff
Malcolm
with the
turned
new
up
baby.
here,
And
Malcolm's
Anyone in
turning up
small
again
business
this
or
weekend in
medium-sized business knows that the government have been bought and paid for by global corporates,
Correct.
and there's no support for small business. There's no, even at a local level here at the moment, Temora Shire Council are on this cost shifting, fist raising against the state government. Oh, cost shifting. But at the same time, Temora Shire Council have got a bunch of consultants working on a HR project where they're
How
delivering
much are they on?
where
Where's the
they're-
cost shifting?
but where they're delivering HR services to the general businesses
Business
in
public.
Temora. Like Temora
Why?
Shire Council's job is to roads, rates, and rubbish.
Correct.
The 3 Rs.
Why are we? So they're getting grant money to do this resilience project where they've identified that there's a need for HR expertise in the local business sector. So Temora Shire Council are going to get a grant and they're going to provide that.
Which I'm going to say really loudly and proudly that nobody running a business needs any help with HR. If somebody's shit, fire them. If you like them, keep them. If you want to pay them more, do so.
Well,
pretty fucking straightforward. End of HR.
So.
Yeah. We've all been businessmen.
But that's overreach, and that's the government moving into the private sector and trying to nursemaid or nanny and make themselves relevant and to spend taxpayers' money. We're paying for that service ultimately. And I'm telling you, if anybody's hard up for a quid at the moment, start a consultancy and get on the gravy train. Get up the front. Get on the gravy train. Let's go. Because we have people employed at council as town planners and engineers, and
they're not poorly paid.
But they will not make a decision without a consultant's report.
Correct.
So we have to get outside expertise before the people who live and work in the community can make a decision about their own community.
We've got directors in Wagga on 300,000 a year plus, and yet those departments still need consultants
to tell them
the traffic side.
So that's a Monday to Friday.
That's how your business works.
We had a traffic engineer consultant.
We'd all be bankrupt. Every single one of us.
You'll love this one. We actually had a traffic engineer or traffic consultant who was based out of somewhere overseas. I can't remember the city. It was India or Sri Lanka or somewhere like that.
Oh, good.
And you know who
I know exactly.
And I know you can't say. But anyway, so what he does back in January, I've got the dates. I've got it all written down. He has just started.
Dubai.
Thank you, Dubai. Sorry, it was Dubai. You're right.
Doing our traffic,
but he's based. He eventually came to Wagga.
He'd be very much in
never
tune
driven
with,
here.
You know, the roads.
What happened?
But
a very short time into his tenure, on a Saturday morning, he goes to I think he's called our city engineer now, Warren Faulkner, and says, I've got to go to Melbourne today and catch a flight tonight back to Dubai because I'm getting married and my car is not fit for purpose and whatever. So they give him a council ute. This is factual. They can do what they like and take whatever action because I've got the facts. Wagga ratepayers don't know about this, but it's been brought to the notice of council and they know at the senior level. So he hops in that ute because he had to catch a flight. I'm pretty sure it was 10 or 10:30 that night. He drove to Melbourne Airport. He then had the vehicle shifted. So he hops on the flight and bye-bye off to Dubai for his wedding. He then has the ute shifted to a private residence. I've got the address, but anyway, it was in Melbourne. They stripped the logos off it. For what reason, I don't know. And of course, comes Monday and the GPS, whatever you call it, thinking, where's this ute?
Oh, the vehicle tracking.
The vehicle
tracking.
Says, well, where's this ute? So they send 2 staff to Melbourne to find that ute. They knock on the private residence, said, oh, it's locked up in the shed. Well, it's our ute. We want it. And I know the names of the 2 people who went and got it. It's not fair for me to say here.
No.
Yeah, of course.
Because they were just doing their job. Now, I think you talk about work health and safety, etc. I don't think they'd be allowed to drive to Melbourne, do all that and drive back in the same day. No. I don't know for a fact that bit, but there'd be travel expenses, there'd be meal allowances. Yes. 2 of them went down there. They brought the vehicle back. They then had to get it re-sign written. Now, that bloke's come back and he's still his employment at Wagga. Warren Faulkner still got his job for some crap reason. And yet these people are on big money. And Warren is a director level. So he'd be on probably 250, 300 grand a year. And this is what they're doing. There's story after story after story. I still have spies in Wagga City Council. And no, they are not councillors.
No.
Because even the staff are fed up with what goes on at local council. So that's what led Hendo and I here to meet up with you blokes because, yes, we are looking at doing the Porky and Hendo show.
The Porky and Hendo show. So we got 2 massive announcements out of that of the lads tonight. We got a One Nation branch opening up in the Porky and Hendo show. He's starting. Actually, I've made you blokes a theme song.
Yeah, you have.
So there's even a theme song for it already done.
And I think it's great because I think it's starting. Everyone knows the mainstream media has been bought and paid for.
Correct.
And they know that all of the important messages are now coming through social media and through forums such as ours and the one that you guys are going to bring forward because there's no private benefit for us out of doing this. In fact, it's a cost, and it's
Well, it
a cost
is,
in
that's
time, and it's an effort to do it. But we do it because we care, and we do it so that people actually
Have a voice.
get the other side of the story.
Correct.
And
Well,
that's
sorry, they get the story.
Well,
Yeah.
so, I think it's a fantastic thing, and the more people that start to do that, and I think there is a groundswell. I, in the political space, have also announced I'm going to run for the next state election in March 2027.
Right.
Now, I haven't decided. I've got a soft spot for the policies and the views of the Australian Citizens Party, and I believe their Post Office Bank campaign and their
That's a great policy, actually.
their campaigns against the bank closures and keeping cash viable for people out in the bush and
Correct.
trying to stick up for our rights out here are very strong principles. But realistically, my sole focus is to bring more focus and more light to the parlour state of local government in New South Wales.
Terrible.
And every single council you go to will have horror story after horror story after horror story of mismanagement, of bullying, of oppressive leadership. And like, there's a local person here who served on council in previous council terms who was bullied. They felt unsupported and they felt isolated at the time, but they've confided in me that they feel now strong enough to come forward publicly and speak about that time and how poorly they were treated. And I believe that there's other people in other councils who are starting to come forward, but this has to stop. It's out of control. What they've done to you, what they do to me, and what they're doing to multiple other people throughout the state. There was a councillor in Parramatta City Council who just recently spent $80,000 of their own money having a code of conduct overturned, and now they've been awarded costs. And the cost for the city of Parramatta would have been massive.
A lot more than that.
Who on earth can afford to go through that process? And there's the case of Karen Renker-Malang down in Kiama, who fought a censure motion in council and had that overturned in the Supreme Court. But again, even though she was awarded costs, there's a point in time where costs start to be awarded, and she had to still bear the expenditure prior to that. So even though she was awarded costs, it still came at great financial burden to herself. And this is all, it's out of control.
But this is at every level now. And I'm fully supportive of you there, Herb. But it's at every level now. I can't, the names escape me at the moment, but you see these cases, in Victoria. I'm trying to think of the lady's name. I think she spent, it's about the Tickle versus Bickle or whatever the hell.
Oh, yeah, Selgrover.
Yeah, it's appalling that. Yes. I mean, we could be here for days with the subjects available.
But every council you go to.
Factor, and the millions of dollars it is costing people. Whereas if we actually just had, it's this ideological left that are just vehemently full of hate and rage. Because you've seen historically, when the centre or centre-right win or take overs, look, that happened, but let's let it go. They generally do. But when the left get control, they want to crush and dispel. They want to destroy people.
We're entering a new age of hyper-socialism and complete control. They want to control.
Well, it's fascism.
They
Look
want
at
to
the
control
government
everything
in your life. Look at it now.
But I'm going to have to differ with you.
Are you trying to suggest that you don't want elbow in your bedroom?
But consecutive Liberal national governments have hung us out to dry.
Correct.
ScoMo was an absolute embarrassment. Turnbull was a disgrace. We can go back, and even Johnny Howard sold us up the river.
Exactly.
And I can't, honestly, it's both sides of.
Oh, it is.
It's
I'm not
both
taking
sides
your
of
side here.
Yeah.
I agree with you there. In fact, it was very during the famous Voice referendum, and there was no one doing anything in Wagga. Although the Liberal Party there will tell you they.
Oh, I did. I was banging that drum.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Politically, I'm talking.
Politically, I was banging the drum. If I could say no, I was because I got in trouble at the radio station for that as well.
So anyway,
they told me I wasn't allowed to promote no on the radio.
That's right. So
guess what I did?
So I pretty much headed the no campaign, and of course I actually had Abbott booked. Security was in place. About 72 hours beforehand, got stabbed in the back, undermined by the Liberal Party. They said, you must handle. I was funding the whole thing, which I didn't care. It was about the principle.
Yes.
And had young Paula coming to speak, a local Aboriginal girl and others. Anyway, sure enough, the 11th hour, they said, you must hand this over to the Liberal Party. We'll introduce you to Tony afterwards if you like. I said, or Mr. Abbott said, what do you think? I'm a school child or something? I said, I'm not handing my checkbook after you do all this. And it wasn't about credit. It was about, it was about control. You see. And I said, no, we've done all this. They were nowhere to be found locally. So anyway, I said, no, that's fine. And they said, oh, you wouldn't cancel. He's the next Prime Minister. I said, want to bet? Because I cancelled an appointment with him when he was Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And anyway, that's all fine. So I rang my good old mate, Malcolm Roberts, Queensland One Nation Senator. Never miss an opportunity. But anyway, and Malcolm said, they stitched it in. And I said, yep. And because I had discussed it with him, he said, yep, I'll bail you out. And he flew all the way down here. He had to be back in Queensland the next night to a rally up there. Now, on that point, where I'm leading to here, you mentioned John Howard. So that was all the preamble to it. Anyway, and of course, someone in the crowd, there was a couple hundred there, whatever, and we put it on. It all went off very well. And someone in the crowd said, who do you think, Malcolm, is the worst Prime Minister in Australia's history? And I think naturally the crowd thought he was going to say Aldo. Well, didn't he give us an education that night? And let me tell you something about Malcolm. He's too intelligent for that lot in that chamber because he's very intelligent. He's actually had a job. He was a mining engineer.
Yes.
No way he had a job and he's in Parliament.
And he's intelligent. And anyway, he gave us a lesson that night and told us just what Howard signed us up to and how he sold us out. And I'll be honest, I was deflated when I heard all that. I knew a few things. I thought, oh, well, fair enough. We don't see the big picture. But it really did deflate me. And that's why I say we haven't had true leadership here for decades.
I sit back and I look at the divergence between the wages and the housing prices. And it started from before Howard, but it was certainly accelerated under the Howard Costello government with the first homeowner grants and all of the confetti gun sort of injections into that to start it bubbling and to start it frothing and actually keep the heat under it. And Aldo's just come out, and on the 1st of October again, they've dropped amount of deposit that you have to make, and they're guaranteeing the balance of it. You don't have to have mortgage insurance.
So the government's going to own your money. Fascism, really?
Yes.
But even I can't think of anything better than owning a home with Aldo.
But all these politicians own multiple homes, and they're all collecting negative gearing, and they're all profiting from this high real estate price. But it's getting to the point where our kids
they've got no future.
Well, not
as far as owning a home or having a white standard of living.
Yes, and home ownership was always that.
It was the pinnacle of.
It was the aspirational portion of Australia.
But it allowed you. It gave you security, and it gave you a home, and it gave you somewhere safe to bring up your family and to leverage into, say, a business loan. And it was the stepping stone for a lot of people. Like I know when I started my business in Temora, I needed some money, and I used my home as equity to fund into now. If I'm renting, I can't do that.
That's right.
So it's not only affecting just the security of a person's residence, but it's also it inhibits their ability to move forward in business and to actually chart their own course. And like I say, all that stuff's been lost. And we've got this situation now where the divergence between actual wages and house prices is just either wages have to go vertical for 5 years, or house prices have to go vertical the other way for 5 years to come back to some sort of relationship that's achievable.
I read an article only today where electrical costs in your world have gone up 200% in the last few years. Building materials up 200 to 300%.
Yes.
It's beyond the reach of most people. And of course, this is where I go back to our point earlier about we have to educate the masses. It's going to take years, may not be even time for me or whomever, but the point is, my issue with this whole thing politically is we have to re-educate those Labor voters, those coalition voters to say what you're doing is not working. It's no good us just all mixing up our own little...
Well, the echo, they live in an echo chamber, but so can we.
Correct. So we need to
very hard
through this process to point out the facts and say it is safe. That's why I go back to that point about our forebears. They were brave. They had courage, not just because they went to war, but because they made decisions and they put in people in power that had vision, had a plan, and they loved this country and they would fight for this country both physically and mentally and
now you're a racist if you love this country.
Apparently.
Or possibly a homophobic as well.
Well,
I don't know how
that
the
could be
two
the next
cross
thing.
over.
So,
again,
but sorry, to finish that point, this is where our Australian citizens, they have to be brave and go, it is okay to put that tick in that other box,
Yes.
because doing the same thing is just sending them down a path to destruction.
Yes.
And that's where we're headed.
This two-party political system, and the way
has to change.
the way Labor's got it set up. Someone quoted a figure to me, and I haven't verified it, but the figure was that over 50% of the working population in New South Wales are either directly or indirectly employed by government.
That's
money.
correct.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So that's just massive government.
So-
That's over government.
And that's why small businesses having trouble employing staff or getting staff, because the government's paying them big
Paying
bucks for
ridiculous
doing
money.
nothing.
But,
After- after
but what are those
starting-
people doing?
yeah.
They're sitting there and they're over-regulating. They're planning. But they're basically interfering with businesses moving forward.
It's
They're not.
government overreach.
Well,
Yes,
they destroy
but they're not producing
productivity.
anything.
No, they produce
I was
nothing.
going to ask you, what do they produce?
Yes.
This goes back to that point of the 3 R's, the roads, rates and rubbish.
Yes.
And I understand there's certain services and utilities that the government has to provide. And on that point, we should never have sold our water. We should
No.
never have sold our utilities, our power.
No.
We should have never sold those things. I mean, China's only got to sit one of those new battleships or whatever the hell they've got up in the Taiwan Straits or Singapore Straits, wherever it is. Our oil supply stops, and 21 days later, Australia stops.
Yep.
Yes.
I mean, this is the stupidity.
Yes.
We've got two oil
We won't need
refineries.
oil when we're going to
Well,
all have electric
well, that's
vehicles.
right.
Do
Yeah,
we,
we need
eh?
oil for it.
Yeah, what's
And of
the
course, we make
oil
nothing,
for?
so we don't need oil
Yeah,
or anything
that's
like
right.
that.
And all the components and things,
Yeah,
they
we've got
run
into
off.
it. And at least then we won't need our phones or anything,
Yeah.
because we'll be dictated to. Just this business of the lack of freedom of speech, the fact that the Human Rights Commission can actually recommend legislation that, in recent weeks, that the government introduced legislation that disallows people speaking against net zero. Seriously?
Well, since we're speaking about this, we've got this idiot e-safety commissioner. Needs to be deported.
don't get
She's
me
dumb as a
started.
bag of hammers.
Back to
little
Canada,
communist
America,
bitch.
wherever she is.
The Sex Discrimination Commissioner has today, the 7th of October, so 2 days ago, Liberal Senator Claire Chandler, I posted about it today because I do that sort of thing, had a conversation with this complete and utter fucking moron, who is the Sex Discrimination Commissioner of Australia. I'm assuming she's on 300-400 grand a year, taxpayers' money. During this interview, where she was being questioned by Claire Chandler, who I'm sure is a little bit on the WEF tip, but she's probably one of the better ones. So if you're not sure or whatever, feel free to check her out. She's Tasmanian, not terrible to look at.
Right.
We'll take that. That's a win.
Well, that's sexist.
I don't give a fuck anymore. I honestly don't
You're a
care anymore.
red-blooded man.
I gave up worrying about all that shit quite some time ago, but now I'm just in baseline. I don't care anymore. But this idiot has come out with a statement saying, I do not understand the term biological men. Clearly, we are not communicating on the same directive. So the sex discrimination minister of this country, it's a readily available video. You can find it. I'll post. I think the link's on my Facebook anyway. Doesn't know what a fucking man is. It was bad enough they didn't know what a woman was 12 months ago. Now they don't know what a bloke is either. They're retarded.
Can I give her a recommendation on how to work it out? Tell her to go and milk a bull. See how well she goes.
Fucking hell, I tell you what.
She'll soon know what a man is.
Now then, in the next class, so Claire, it looks like Claire Chandler's been on a bit of a fucking rip, tear and roar of late. She also lined up this Australian Indian-born race discrimination commissioner.
Sorry, run all that by me. The what?
The Indian-born Australian race discrimination commissioner. Why do we need these fucking people? Put him on a boat. He can fuck off too. And he was grilled about explaining that white Australians do not and cannot experience racism, but fundamentally we are a racist country, and it's outrageous. And then some other fucking peanut head of the chair or whatever he was in that same video, when she turned around and said, well, this guy's a fuckwit, I'll talk to you. Turned around and said, no, as a white man in Australia, we can't experience racism, but we are a racist country. These people are on fucking millions of dollars between them in wages, sucking the life out of us, coming up with this gibbering fucking shit.
This is what I'm talking about. The radical left, the government overreach, the fascism where they're wanting government in every sector of our life. Even now, as you said earlier, they have now introduced where they're even going to own part of our home. So they are linked with us absolutely almost
inextricably. We are, we're
almost
fucking married. Lucky us.
into the government.
Now, it's mentioned here, one of our regular watchers has said, since Whitlam, We've been sold down the river, and the World Economic Forum has a lot to do with it. If you don't know who the World Economic Forum is, people have a good look. People go to me, oh, that's all a conspiracy theory. I go, they've got a fucking website. They advertise their shit. It's a real thing. As far as I'm concerned, the World Health Organization needs to be defunded. Australia shouldn't be sending any money to those ass clowns. The UN, we might as well pack up and get out of that fucking thing. It's useless and a waste of taxpayers' money as well. Communist pricks. And the World Economic Forum are world-class scumbags. So anybody who's watching, feel free to go and have a look at those three entities. And if you have any brains whatsoever, you will join me in opposing those at every opportunity. We've also had Councillor Richard Farley, who we know was here earlier. He's rolled in his little bit here. This is what would actually fix things. Edgar L. Fage's automated payment transaction tax would replace every other tax income, GST, company payroll, you name it, with a tiny flat rate on 2%. Every transaction, automatically collected through the banking system. No loopholes, no tax evasion, no paperwork. Everyone pays the same small rate, but the biggest traders and corporations naturally pay more because they move more money. It will double the amount of consolidated revenue we collect. And you know what? I don't disagree.
I would actually back him on that. It was shown to me some years ago where a 2% consumption tax across everything.
Yeah.
Simplistic. Now, the actual example was shown to be in black and white, and the revenue is beyond comprehension because people then say, oh, yeah, but then you're ripping everyone's tax, people paying more tax. No, they're not. Everyone, and I know they then say, oh, but, I go and get $10 out of the bank, it cost me 20 cents. Yep, you got $100 out, it costs you $2. The point being, it's all automatic. You don't need the 50,000 employees in the tax office.
That's right.
The deductions are gone, the whole thing. It's not worth anyone paying millions of dollars towards accounts. Accountants won't like it, and that was where this came
Listen,
from.
AI is going to get rid of accountants anyway, because you don't need them. You're not going to need them solicitors are just about done. You're not going to need conveyances. I can do it here, and I've done little shows on this before during this program. I could type in, I'd like I'll go to my mate ChatGPT. I'll go, since I've done a song for you blokes, I would like a contract where you're going to pay me a royalty of $3 a week every time you play that song. Agreed between Mr. Paul Fennell and Michael. What's your middle name? Michael John Henderson. Print that off. Sign Dean McRae. You sign it there. No lawyer needed. Bye. You blokes are just about out of legal document.
And that's the point. That's why I go back. I assume that's what Richard's referring to there.
Yep, I think
it is on the money. As I said, One Nation's got their split income tax policy and things like that, which I support. Because going to the extreme, like I was recommending, it's like having 5 heads. And people wave their arms around like one of them knockdown dollars. Go, oh, he's nuts, he's lost the plot. Have a look at it. Yeah. Do the modelling. They love to do modelling.
No, only on the ones that suit them. I mean, look, I detest all tax. I can't stand it. And but we've got 126 different taxes in this country. So the fact that 1, it's convoluted. 2, clearly it's convoluted because they're thieving pricks. 3, it's too fucking much. I don't want to participate in it. I look for every opportunity. And if I'm doing it at my level, I guarantee that the big businesses with billion-dollar accountants are going, how do we get around this shit? Not paying that.
Well, this is exactly what the problem is. The big corporates who are profiting the most from Australia's riches are paying the least amount of tax.
Yeah.
And the tax burden is falling to the worker that they can get hold of and absolutely roger.
Well,
and that's
that system there. So you're looking at, let's say, I don't know, who's an international miner at the moment who's doing really well.
Rio,
right?
Santos.
Okay, Santos, whoever, right? Santos makes X amount, 2% automatically. That's just done.
Yes.
They're not even going to try and get out of that. They're just going to go, oh, fuck, well, that's fair enough. Yeah. We'll cop that.
Yep.
But when you start going, it's going to cost you 30, 40, 50% just to operate. Plus, then on top of that, you've got to pay this for your staff, and then you've got to pay this for your staff. And then they're going to go, righto, let's either take our business offshore and our jobs, or how do we get around it?
Correct. And the other part of that most people, most communists, socialists, fascists, whatever you want to call them, lefties,
dead
whatever
shits.
you call them. Yep, you can say that. I didn't. But they're then going to reinvest that 98% back into industry, back into business.
in
You
this
know,
country.
We need the Gina Rineharts of the world because they actually create business. They actually do a lot of good works that we don't even know about or hear about.
Absolutely.
Through welfare, different things. But she might buy a big yacht, she might buy a Rolls Royce, whatever, but it feeds back into the economy. That's how an economy works. So if you keep taxing those heavily burdened because they make more, that's just straight out socialism because it's tall poppy syndrome. They've got more than I have, but they take all the risk. Who bails them out when it fails? No one.
Oh,
You know, this type of thing. So this is where
you're operating without a safety net.
and what did Harvey Milei, whatever his name was, in Argentina do? He reduced corporate taxes, etc., and turned the Argentinian economy around.
Harvey is
enough,
facing a few headwinds at the moment.
He
He's going to have
is.
to battle through that.
but
One
he
thing,
has turned it around though.
And he
Yeah.
certainly turned it around quicker than even
One
he thought. He
thing
went,
I'm
oh
correct.
shit, I didn't see that coming.
No.
Surprise,
that's right.
surprise.
What happened there?
one thing that really disappointed me today was that David McBride had an appeal dismissed at the High Court. So that's the end of the line for his appeal process now.
Refresh my memory with
David McBride's the lawyer, the military lawyer who blew the whistle on war crimes in Afghanistan.
Right, yeah.
So he's in jail for 5 years for disclosing military secrets.
Yeah.
And his defence was going to rely on the Nuremberg defence that because basically what the court have ruled is that he has to follow orders without fail, and his position was, no, if I know that people are breaking the law and murdering people, then I've got an obligation to report that. Now, he went through the proper processes that he could within the military, and they basically rejected any actions or didn't take any meaningful action. So in the end, he released the
Document.
the confidential documents to an ABC
right,
reporter,
okay.
and then he's been found guilty of.
Why you'd release anything to the ABC
Well,
reporters?
well,
I don't know.
That was the main error.
But it did actually give shed light on the story. Now, to date, David McBride's the only person who's been prosecuted and jailed over the whole matter, regardless of what the war crimes committed were. He had an appeal. He took it to the High Court today. They haven't, in the early news reports, they haven't given us the detail as to why the appeal was rejected, but it's been dismissed. So that's his last avenue of appeal.
And look, I
Someone
think,
said to me today that the opportunity for someone to go to the Privy Council, which used to be the very after the High Court, that was
You
removed.
can't now.
No, that's been removed. So pretty much once you get to the High Court, if they dismiss it, then that's it. So that's his last chance to have anything done against that sentence and the severity of the sentence, and his argument that he's supposed to turn a blind eye or to things he knows that are wrong. Anyway, it's just another example to people in the world, or in Australia in particular, that whistleblowing is bad for your health. It's bad for your career. You're better off just turning a blind eye, or if possible, probably getting a brown paper bag and saying, we'll stuff some in here.
Or tell someone you don't like.
Yeah.
That's
That's a
right.
good one, isn't it?
I find war crimes a really, really hard one because we train these men.
Yeah.
I think are we still training the transgendered lesbians to go over? I don't know.
I think
Oh,
they've
but you
been
can't go
banned.
overseas. But you can't go overseas if you haven't had a COVID vaccine. Fancy that.
Fuck.
Look, that's
But-
another debate.
It is another debate,
Right.
but I mean, I look at it and I go, we train these men and women to go over to these shithole third world countries, and they are shitholes. I don't know why we keep importing their fucking
And
offshoots over
They
here.
don't have the
But
same respect.
They don't have any respect. They've got no respect. They're chasing our people around fucking machetes, and we're concerned about sending our military people into a military zone where bad shit's happening, and we train them to kill. That's what they're. I hope that's what. I hope that's what we're doing. I hope we're training our army to be killers, because look, I've seen the state of this country. We need a few killers who are going to be relatively capable going forward. Otherwise, we're effectively are going to become a Sharia law fucking caliphate. I'm fucked if I'm having that. So we do need a couple of badasses who do have that capability. But I also think it's the same as the Richard Boyle with the taxation thing. If they do come forward in some way, shape, or
Troy
form,
Stoles.
Yeah,
With
like
the-
I mean, they've
I'm
got
not
to.
aware of those.
He was involved in the clubs New South Wales, the gambling.
Right.
He blew the whistle in some respect. There was some. I haven't got the detail of it. I have to get
But your point being that these whistleblowers, I mean,
Anyone
I
who's-
remember that nurse, going back some years, a whistleblower and things like that. There's so many. I understand from that perspective.
Yes.
These people who blow the whistle on certain circumstances,
There should be
they
some certain
should be absolute
protections
protection
for sure.
But there's no
them. And if-
protection for them.
No,
Yeah,
and if
Richard Boyle was the guy who came out and pointed out the ATO's heavy-handed tactics, bullying, harassing, and
Yes.
intimidating the shit out of people.
Yeah.
They threatened him with more jail time than Ivan Milat.
Right.
So we need to get a bit of a grip on proportionality here. What's more important, taking some people out into the bush and murdering them, or pointing out that the ATO are a bunch of fucking thieves? Okay, hang on a minute.
Yeah, I guess our sense of balance is just so out of kilter. Our moral compass is just way off.
Yep.
Kilter. It's you see some of these. I mean, there was that case. Look, we could go over.
I've
case
just
after
got the
case after
Troy
case.
Stolz case up. So he was head of Club New South Wales' anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism unit until 2019. He leaked an internal report that stated, now this is off of Wikipedia, so I'm only reading directly from Wikipedia. So if it's incorrect, I apologise. He leaked an internal report that stated that 95% of registered clubs in New South Wales were non-compliant with anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism laws. So the clubs were profiting handsomely from this influx of money that was coming through their gambling licenses, but weren't checking very closely as to the provenance of that money. And Troy basically blew the whistle and said, "Oi,
something going on here.
there's some shit going down here," and he got absolutely poleaxed over it. Stolz was sued by Clubs New South Wales, with the former employer arguing that he owed a duty of confidence, and Stolz had used confidential documents in his consulting work after leaving club. The charges were settled shortly after Clubs New South Wales CEO was fired. So, in the end, he was vindicated, but it cost him his health, his life. There's
circumstances in the greater good of the community.
Yes.
That if whistleblowers come up with something, they should have the confidence to put information forward in a confidential situation. I know that sounds like a contradiction in terms, but if it's found to be correct, that they should be protected.
You shouldn't be going to jail for telling the truth.
Correct. But the problem is
protecting the interests of the community.
Correct. Whereas
That's
the powers are so great now, though, that whistleblowers, and this is what they're wanting to do. They're wanting to suppress.
Well, this is the thing, and it's what
they
they're
want to suppress the truth.
And it's what they're doing to councillors.
Correct.
It's like
shutting you down.
Yeah, and pulling out the big stick and saying, "We're going to flog you, and we are going to do it public." Look, what I say to people in this community, and what I say to anyone, is the bullies in this community, they want me in the corner, rocking backwards and forwards, sucking me thumb. They want me.
They just want you to complain.
They want my reputation destroyed. They want my business destroyed, and they have taken actions to do so. They want to be able to stand there with their arms folded in front of the community and say, "See what we do to people who go against us? Don't go against us." Well, guess what, dickheads? I'm here and I'm still going, and you haven't shut me down. And I've been fighting this fight since 2018. I'm going to fight this fight for as long as it takes. And I'm going to fight this fight to the highest levels. And there's stuff that's going to come out in the next few years that's going to smoke you. He's got no idea about the stuff that's been done to me and been covered up, and the rumour and the disgusting things that have happened to me and my business and my family. And that's what I'm fighting. I'm fighting that bullshit, because there's bullies in this community that are moving in this community, and they're putting themselves forward as reputable people, and they are nothing but thugs. Low-level thugs, and they're being supported by a group of weak individuals who've got no guts and they can't speak up. Now, this shit's going to change, and that's what I'm doing, and that's why I'm here.
And that's why there are a lot of people in that role, and I feel for them in that role, because I know it's not a competition, but I know in my time, like I started in this in about 2010. I actually started getting mixed up in politics probably about 25 years ago behind the scenes. But in that time, particularly since council, I mean, yes, I put a motion to call off the sister city relationship with Kunming in China. let me go on the public record here because the media would never report this. I actually didn't think I'd ever get it up even on the night, and I knew it would upset some lefties. They wet their beds and do whatever else and carry on. I thought I'd cop a bit of flack, but what happened was just unbelievable. This is factual. So when it went through, I actually got it through on the night. It was probably the most shortest-lived motion to ever be carried in Wagga City Council. Lasted a week, but the numbers worked on the night that I actually got it through, and immediately I had Michael McCormick come out and all but call me a racist. He put some statement out. Wes Fang actually called me a racist dog whistler. So there's wonderful protection of our own low. And because let me tell you, the reason I did it was because, first of all, these sister city relationships are just a junket. Yeah. I mean, we get nothing economically from any of it. But anyway, that said, I had discovered documents, which I still have. Yes, I still have them. So if you come looking, I've still got copies. And where our Mayor Conkey at the time, not allegedly, but had factually been in contact with the Mayor of Kunming looking for PPE equipment. This is in December 2019, before the pandemic had been announced. They were looking. Now, he broke the law there. He didn't report it to DFAT, which is a requirement under any government organisation if you're in direct conversation or discussion with any foreign entity, let alone the Mayor of Kunming. Remember, Kunming has millions of people. It's not like Wagga that has 60 or 70,000 people. They wanted PPE gear because it was this long letter, because they had this virus-like flu. That's all they said. And they wanted us to provide them or help provide them PPE gear. They wrote back and said, no, we can't help, but we'll put you in touch with some people, whatever. This went on. So I started digging. Then I found that they'd actually had, as far back as 96, through the sister city relationship, there'd been 10 secret police from the Chinese secret police brought out here. No one knows what for. 10. Again, I've got the document, so come after me. Yeah. It's actually on council's website, which vanished for a while, interestingly, through this whole thing. So there was all these sorts of things going on. I thought, well, I don't want to be in a formal relationship with with another city that's going to mislead and misrepresent and lie to us. So I put the motion forward. Had nothing, and we had continuously been lied to by the Chinese. So if you're in a sister city relationship, as they like to say, well, that's our conduit to discussion and what do they say? Dialogue. I can't stand that word, but anyway, and dialogue. So I put a motion up roughly the March, April, whatever it was, to sever ties with Kunming, our sister city. I put this in the report. Well, all hell broke loose. I was actually interviewed on every continent in the world, or it went chaotic. And I still have the document also where the Chinese consulate in Sydney said that it doesn't use my name, but it says the people involved should be restrained and detained. Now, that's in Australia, and yet our politicians never came to my defence at all. There were death threats. Absolute legitimate death threats. Andrew Hastie even contacted me at one point because he was concerned. Andrew Bolt, other people of significance contacted me because they were concerned about our safety. I was having to take safety precautions in private security. Then following that, and then of course things went on, and then through political interference, there was the case of all of a sudden there's cattle on my property destroying my crop. I never left my property, but I got arrested. That's what I went. I should never have pleaded down and got a Section 10 because I never hit this bloke, did anything. But even the day I was in court, his daughter had 400 head of cattle on my property with video evidence of them destroying. The police were there, LLS were there. Oh, no. The police came to me at court and actually said, you cannot go home because there's cattle on your property. They were off route, no permit, all this sort of thing. I had dead crows put in my mailbox. I mean, you've got to be a good shot to get a crow at the best of times. Yes. This is what was going on. There was actual legitimate death threats made on my phone, which were given to the police. They took some action. That bloke got a fine. Now, I was in a political campaign, and the law actually states it's an automatic jail sentence for a political participant to receive death threats in their court. But no, nothing done. Now, there was political interference in all this. Even into the court case, the day the magistrate was handing down, he said, there's political ramifications for this. This is a really serious. It was for harassment and intimidation. I was on my property inside my fence. He was outside. I lost a $60,000 crop, had the whole lot destroyed. Nothing to see here. I mean, the whole system, because I had blown the whistle on these things. Yes. They need to suppress it. And yet, I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. I've since, in recent years, had $250,000 worth of sheep stolen. The Cootamundra Rural Crime Squad can vouch for that.
Yes.
I mean, this organised attack on people. So I do know only too well. But no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here. I'm not saying I'm running for office again, but I am never going anywhere.
Yeah.
And if I get knocked off,
And
well,
you've got the
so
documents.
be it. And I've got
And he's got the
documents.
documents.
Get my
So,
copies as well.
I will,
I'll put them
yeah,
there
I'll
just
send
in
them.
case. Just in case.
Yeah, I
I haven't
will.
read
Yeah.
And that's the level. Like, you can tell when someone's genuine, and you can tell when someone's full of shit. And these people who are full of shit, they've got themselves pumped up that high and mightily, and they've got these reputations that they're so relying upon, and they just can't tolerate the idea that they'll be exposed. You know, all my facts are on the table. I'm quite happy to go to any mediation in any forum and just put the cards on the table and we'll sort it out.
Yeah.
You know, because I've got my evidence and I've got everything that I've said. If I had have said something that was provably wrong, I'd be out the gate. I'm in halfway through my second term on council and I'm still being supported by the community. And the best thing about living out in the bush is they can get away with character assassination in the big cities because
Correct.
people don't know you personally.
They
And
wouldn't have
people
a
don't
clue.
know
Only
your
a number.
background. Yes.
Yeah.
But I've lived in this area all my life. And if people want to check my bona fides, it's not hard. So if they want to talk, but if they want to talk smack about me, then someone can believe it for a while, but then they actually get set straight by people who actually know the real you
Correct.
and know your history and know the way you operate. So it doesn't fly. Those big city games here don't fly in the bush. That's the one good thing about the bush is your reputation will prevail and your actual real person will come through in the end. That's my great. I can understand in the city if people don't know each other personally, how they could assassinate someone's character.
They their next door neighbour.
Well, they
Right.
trust the media.
Yes,
See,
but
this
if
is
anyone
the
wants to,
problem.
I grew up in Ganmain. I've lived all my life in Ganmain until I moved over here in 2000. So if anyone in Temora has got any questions as to my integrity, they can ring someone up in Ganmain that they know and say, "What's this bloke like?" More than likely, that person will say, "Well, he talks too much, he drinks too much, he's a bit of a loudmouth."
We
And
must be brothers by a different
but that'd be about it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you know, I've got nothing to hide. It's all there in the public sphere. And the bullshit and the lies and the intimidation, I've been accused in these codes of conduct of bullying, intimidation and harassing behaviour. And mate, I've been on the receiving end of it. Right from the start, from the first time I stood up for myself, I have copped pineapples and just vilification, vitriol and hatred and just been lied to, bullied, intimidated and it's been...
Well, attempted intimidation. It doesn't work real
Because I
well.
was going to say, how many codes of conduct did you issue? How many codes of conduct did you issue?
Did I issue?
Yeah, because
Well,
someone upset you.
Um,
None.
You know, you didn't really care, did you? Because you took it on the chin. You might have done it as a response because that is your only process available. But ultimately, what I'm getting at there is they'll attack you and carry on, and you'll wear it, and you'll wear it on the chin, and you're happy to debate them. But they're not. They want to go down this process.
That's exactly right. They don't want the facts exposed.
Correct.
They don't want to sit down in an open forum,
Correct.
in a public forum, and have the real story told to the community.
Correct.
They want to hide behind all this bullshit process, this weaponization of this shit dysfunctional process that the government freely admits does not work and is not fit for
It says it in
purpose.
the documents.
You know, that's where we're at.
That's why it goes back to my point. If you want to fix the New South Wales budget, clean out local government.
That's a good
Yeah.
starting
Yeah.
point.
Well, and that's why I'm going to run for state, and I'm not
Good.
going to get elected. But
How do you know?
But
You never know.
But what I am going to do is I'm going to use that platform to highlight the deficiencies in local government. Yeah, because it's not just Temora and it's not just Wagga Wagga. It's Coolaman, it's Junee, it's West Wylam.
Correct.
They've all got skeletons buried, and they've all got people that they're suppressing and driving into the ground, and they've got slush funds, and they've got waste, and they've got a cover up.
But seriously, just on this finishing note on that point, can you really explain to me how a general manager in a council like Temora or Bland, some of these smaller councils can warrant a few $100,000 a year? I mean, seriously.
Not even close.
This is
that's
part of the
nonsense.
problem of the system. It's one boot fits all, and that just doesn't fly.
Well,
So
when a
this is
councillor
why our
can't get
budgets are destroyed.
when a councillor can't get reimbursed for any legal expenses, when a councillor takes all the risk, when a councillor gives up their own time, and I get paid the princely sum of $12,000 a year, and our general manager gets the equivalent of $6,000 a week.
Correct.
So in 2 weeks, they've made what I make out of council in a year.
And what most people don't understand, and I will look at the camera to explain this to those listening and watching, most people think councillors have this great authority and they're ultimately the ones who, yes, they make the decision, but they're backed into a corner. They have no authority whatsoever. And because the general manager and the directors will say, oh, councillors, it's your decision. But when you want to go against that decision, they then say, oh, but you have to come up with all the legal framework. You have to come up with this, etc., blah, blah, blah. You cannot actually instruct a council officer what to do. So if we decide
Can't talk to
to,
No.
yeah, well, that's right, you can't
You
talk,
can't
but if we
talk.
decide, and so as a council body, if we said, we don't want to be, I don't know, fixing up something, or I don't know, we don't want to actually support some Mardi Gras or something, we don't have the right to do that unless a report comes to us. We actually have to say, sorry, I'm speaking like I'm still there, but councillors actually have to say that we receive a report on such and such. Oh, and by the way, that'll cost X amount, blah, blah, blah.
I'll
Taking
do
up
a report
staff
for you
time.
for nothing.
You know, all this
knock
time.
one
Get
up.
AI.
Also,
Yeah,
absolutely.
AI.
So my point being, councillors bear all the responsibility and zero authority.
My experience is
problem.
this. The bureaucrats, the general managers and the officers of
Dracula's
council,
in charge of the blood bank.
if it's an easy decision, they make the decision. They don't even bring it to
Correct.
council. The only decisions they bring to council are shit decisions they don't want to make, and they hide behind the councillors, and we cop the community blowback.
Correct.
That's how it works.
Correct.
They use us as a human shield, and we get.
But this is what's going on at every level.
Yes.
The unelected bureaucrats running everything.
Well, because we're doing a lesson on running these things,
Right, okay.
2 hours is where
What?
we
Yeah.
get to, where
Wow.
we can only, well, I'll show you how to do it afterwards, but 2 hours is kind of our cut-off. We could go forever,
I was gonna
but
say, I
it
didn't
breaks
know that
up,
time had gone by.
it breaks up our ability to do certain
Right, okay.
generation of shorts and editing, or automatic or shorts and editing, and I'm
okay.
bugging if I'm going to do it myself. So, couple of things. Porky and Hendo starting a new show. Do you know when?
Soon. We'll let you know when you can
Yeah,
announce
we'll
it.
share
When
it.
it's ready, we'll share it. We'll promote it around. I'm going to recommend you all tune
Tune
in
into
and
it.
check it out. The One Nation launch in
21st.
Wagga.
21st of October.
21st,
6 o'clock at the RSL Club.
Yep.
We might even invite Malcolm on, see if he'll come
Yeah,
on
that
here via
sounds good.
Zoom. He might
Sounds
do
good.
that.
He might do that.
He may
We
Paul
also-
Lane's not
we should
coming.
go
No,
on.
Yeah,
Pauline,
Paul
no,
Lane's not
Pauline
coming.
can't make
We
it.
should go live.
Well, Pauline can always come on here. She doesn't have
Yep.
to leave her house.
That's right.
I've got the new podcast on my side of the fence. Outlaw Hearts is coming. That's a little bit less political, a little bit more heartfelt. First topic is I've got about 8 interviews with women and families on the topic of miscarriage. So when we lost the baby and I did that and brought it up, I ended up getting a heap of feedback and a heap of people reaching out. Would I drive that cart? Never thought I'd be in the space of promoting that as an issue, but I'm happy to host the discussions. So I've separated that out into a platform. Other than that, Councillor Irvine's still doing what he does, getting ready for a state election run. Obviously, if you need your sign writing, this man. These men have businesses, support them. If you want to buy a car or get pest control, you do it from me. Yeah, no, that's
Well, I bought one recently and he did a good job.
yeah. There you go. So it's all happening, but it does keep the money in the, I guess, well, in the economy, but in the supportive people, keeps good people who whose principles and values you appreciate in business. And one of the weapons of our enemies is to cut off your monetary supply. So support your your champions as much as you can. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Our pleasure.
Thanks
Thank you.
for having us.
Guys, for coming on in.
Sorry to take so long. We didn't
No,
realise.
that's how long it normally takes.
Well, there you go.
Thank you to everybody who's watching. Thank you to everyone tuning in. And of course, be brave and share it.
Yes.
Be brave and share it. Thanks very much, and we'll talk soon. Have a great week.